Steven, I didn't sell out, son. I bought in. Keep that in mind.
Welcome to episode 251 of the Independent Characters. This is Carl.
This is Josh.
And this is Campbell, taking his sweet time to say his name third.
That's okay. As long as we don't talk over each other, right?
Dramatic pause.
First things first, this show is sponsored by two of our great members of our Patreon, Kevin Fleurlage? Anybody got any better?
I'm assuming it's not Fleurlagi.
I don't think it's Fleurlagi. I think it's probably Fleurlage.
I'm no linguist, but
Kevin, let us know.
I guess.
And Scott Salmon. Salmon?
it might be salmon.
Salmon.
Kevin and Scott, thank you so much for letting me butcher your name online. But also to everybody on the Patreon, thank you so much for your support. It is very much appreciated. We're also part of the Goonhammer Media Network. You can check out media.goonhammer.com for more shows and information. And then finally, what are we going to talk about today? Well, today it's episode 251, and Josh and I have returned from the War on the Shore. Josh has returned from LVO. Right. Did you go to LVO, Campbell? You did not.
Also right.
Campbell, you did not go to LVO.
No. I've been here
and working hard on Goonhammer and 40K Badcast, and we have some thoughts on War on the Shore, which we'll go into. Great event, like you couldn't ask for a more.
It was a really cool event.
Viewing event, like it was. I was
seeing pictures from y'all and Peter over there, and I'm just like, oh man, I really screwed up by not doing this.
Met some great people. Had a fun time.
Yeah.
God, it was beautiful out. So it was a good time. Hawaii's like never.
Spoiler alert, but probably not the only one that's going to happen.
Yeah. Also
very hard to make this happen again in future years.
And in the process help some kids, and it's all for Table War charity. So really good objectives there. Table War Charities, if you don't know, is a charity for autism advocacy. I sit on the board with it, and we basically help out families with kids that are struggling in school due to learning disabilities, and in particular autism. So it's all about autism advocacy and helping the parents navigate the maze that is what they can and can't ask for from the school and what the school has to provide, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, enough about that. Let's leap into Elite Choice.
Great event, great cause.
And we'll talk more about it in a few minutes. But in addition, I have some thoughts. The title of the episode is Why Terrain and Layouts Define 40K. And I have some real thoughts about this. It was educational for me and eye-opening, and some things I hadn't really thought of or considered before that I want to share with people. And I want to be clear, it's not like this is bad, this is good. It's just this is why it's different. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Elite Choice. Campbell, why don't you go first?
Sure. Since we're going to be talking a lot about terrain, layouts, and so on, the thing that caught my eye was Berman's Shatterpoint terrain set. This is for Star Wars Shatterpoint.
Yeah.
And he has done, I don't know if it's he or not, but they've done a wonderful job replicating that 70s Star Wars beige. So it's a very specific tone, and it sounds funny to say out loud, but there's it's the same color if you go to if you watch A New Hope or if you go to the theme park or whatever, it all looks like this.
Yeah.
And I think also, although these are plastic kits, they do a very good job of taking very basic boxy shapes and dressing them up with details that I think if you're scratch building terrain or trying to gussy up your MDF terrain or whatever, give you some really good inspiration.
Yeah.
But also they've done this wonderful, subtle, consistent weathering across the whole thing. There's this great splotchy modeling effect that just looks like built up soot and dust and dirt. And man, this just especially with a very cute little backdrop, this just looks like Star Wars, man.
Well, and it's super important to Star Wars that things look worn out and dirty, and I mean, that was the whole
original
point.
Grimdark.
Yeah.
It's
dirty dark.
Yes, that gritty diesel punk is the term that was thrown around a lot, but everything has that worn, real quote unquote feel to it.
Yeah,
that I think
carbon scoring.
Precisely, carbon scoring. Not carbon
for
scoring.
Days.
Though.
Yeah,
Josh,
totally different.
What did you pick out?
Yeah, I went with Will Yasui's Blood Angels Chaplain, and Will has just been doing a phenomenal job of hobby in the last year and a half or so, sharing everything from the Tyranids to his take on Sharkadons to now the Blood Angels here. And this Chaplain is no exception to the outstanding work that Will has been producing and sharing with the community. So that was absolutely stood out to me, worthy of call out. Just love the highlights up to a nice blue on the black of the Chaplain. Amazing kind of just scroll work and detail in all the purity seals off the back of it. The book, kind of all the just nice wax approach to it. The classic, got to have the classic red bolter in there, which is a really nice just callback to the classic red bolters. But then the differentiation of red into almost kind of a magenta color with the kind of the loincloth, and then the handle of the Crozium.
Yeah, the handle of the Crozius. Yeah,
just really, really nice balance of color, and that kind of warmth again balancing with the blue highlights on the black there, and just a really nice kind of subtle gold to it. Not bright and shiny, but just has a lot of character, kind of very peak grimdark. It's a Chaplain, one of the most grimdark things you can get in 40K. Just a fantastic execution.
And yet there's a happy little rose bush right next to him to show you what he's fighting for. This is the first word I think when I see this is sharp, because this just looks so clean, so crisp, so defined. But I love not just that he had wonderful like differentiation in tonality as far as colors go, with the tabard, the bolter, and so on, but in texture, he's got this wonderful cross-hatching sort of thing going on in all the fabric that makes it very different looking from the sharp edges of the armor. And this is just a very bad cast statement here, a Chaplain-ass Chaplain. Like this is a Chaplain in every positive way. Looks fantastic.
That's a Chaplain. And he looks amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible.
Great job, Will. You're crushing it right now. So keep sharing, keep painting, and keep doing your thing.
Yep.
No notes.
Yeah. No notes. I had picked something else originally, like very early on, and then I saw Dave Gormley and his Legions Imperialis army get posted, and I had to switch it up because wow, like this is really great. And anybody that can complete infantry and Legions Imperialis, I'm impressed by, like Josh, because that stopped me dead in my tracks when I saw it. And it sounds so easy, and they are fairly easy to paint, but my God, are they monotonous and boring. And
definitely had to use a pair of these super magnifying hobby glasses with LED built in to get those details.
Yeah, I got that. I got those as well. And it just, like, I can't get over that hump for Legions Imperialis stuff. But these
start with the tanks. The tanks are so much fun, but the infantry can be a bit of a grind for sure.
Yeah, these just look fantastic and, well done, Dave. I mean, we know Dave is super talented, whether it's building costumes or painting orcs, but painting Legions Imperialis, this is really, really an impressive looking project. So great job, Dave.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
A really nice
together.
Yeah, a really nice tie-in with his. He was a Titanicus player before Legions Imperialis re-release, so tying into his Legio Solaria Titanicus force there too. Very nice touch.
Yeah.
With a cohesive basing throughout.
Yeah, for sure. So with that said, let's just go ahead and leap right into Workbench hobby progress stuff. So for me, it's been not a tremendous hobby progress period. I came back from War on the Shore a bit sick. Plus I've been just goofing off doing other stuff with my wife. So I will say I discovered something from Uncle Adam there. I was watching one of his videos, and he mentioned grimdark painting and how you can get like this grimdark effect. And he pointed people to Grimdark Compendium, which I don't know if you guys were aware of, but I was not. Grimdark Compendium is a YouTube channel, as well as they sell some products. But man, watching these painting tutorials and the way they go about approaching, I've been talking for a while about weathering, but the way they go approaching the entire paint scheme for some of these Marines and such just really inspired me. I bookmarked the channel. I've been devouring the content from it. I ordered their villainy, their villainy ink set, because I really want to try out some of the techniques that they have displayed there for, I think for Minotaur's kill team. Cause I've got plenty of those sitting around, and it just like, I think that'd be a great starting point just to start screwing around with these inks and see how I can kind of match the techniques that they're talking about, because you see the results that they pull out of that. And mind you, these guys are very, very good painters, and they're approaching it in a way I've never thought about approaching painting. So ordered a set of the villainy inks. They should be arriving soon. I just want to start screwing around with them and see if I can achieve some like results from those. And then I've been edge highlighting my Sisters of Battle Rhino and finishing that up. So I'm very close to done with that. And then hopefully I'm trying to re-kickstart myself into getting into painting again. So I really want to get this Sisters army done. Again, I talked about what kind of stopped me was I hit a stopping point with my white. Like I hit this point and I was frustrated it wasn't coming out the way I was trying to get it. It was really weird because, you know, I thought, well, I did that first squad and it came out fine. I went back and looked at that first squad and I'm like, oh, and very similar, like I'm very close to what that was. Why did this stop me? You know, I think I need to just get back on the horse and just keep going. I just need to push through that squad, be done with it, and move on to the next one, and then build that momentum up again.
You'd also painted so much that you were ready for a break also.
Yeah, but that's enough of an excuse. Like,
and your brain gave you an excuse.
Well, in addition, like I'm helping Shell paint some stuff, so like putting coats and lightning bolts on stuff gets a little old after a while. But I also
make some progress on your stuff again.
I've also got my my Chosen assembled and primed and ready to go too. Like I feel myself developing this backlog on my painting table, because I understand also why when people are playing Abaddon and you're better off running them with Chosen as opposed to Terminators, there's like a huge benefit from the Chosen and given to the Chosen, whereas the Terminators, there's like a lot of overlap in what they're already getting from Abaddon's auras and all this. So yeah, so I mean, it looks cool, but and it's still a tough unit, but I think I can get away with it with Chosen. So that's me. Josh, what have you been working on?
Nice, yeah.
And I'm looking at your note here, and I know that's all about to change.
Not a ton of hobby, largely because War on the Shore and LVO took up just two events back to back like that, took up a lot of my time. I did have some nice sunny days here in between, so I did get all my Eldar primed. So I got them. Everything that I have built to this point is now primed and ready to go. So once I get the codex in hand there, I can start. Everything in that book has changed like completely in so many ways. So I really need like the book in hand to spend a little time with it and then prioritize like what's the list I want to build towards, paint towards, and then prioritize for a 2,000 point list and a 3,000 point list for when we do our large narrative game.
Yeah.
So I want to spend a little bit of time with that before just jumping in and painting stuff. So with that in mind, I jumped into a couple kind of peripheral projects that I had in my backlog. One being assembling a bunch of units for the Old World, which there's an escalation league kicking off here in Santa Cruz through Herrick Games. And there's like 30 people in this locally that are in an Old World escalation league, which is a huge local community for the Old World.
And if we haven't mentioned it, Eric's also a sponsor of the show, so we appreciate their
absolutely.
Sponsorship.
So very excited to jump on board with that and play some Old World games and enjoy. And then because Adepticon was an interesting time of getting into events, I couldn't get into anything that I wanted initially. So I jumped on a Shatterpoint event for Adepticon on Saturday, and I had played exactly one demo game at Adepticon in 2023. But had been talking about buying into it, especially right before I got laid off. I was like just about to pull the trigger, then I got laid off. I was like, okay, I've got enough games. I need to prioritize real world stuff instead of hobby right now. But got a really good deal on stuff, and then Sky had some amazing discounts on some good products. So
that's weird.
I pulled the trigger on a couple things, and I'm back in. And because it was one of the few events I could get into for Adepticon, I'm now going to be playing in a
Shatterpoint
premier Shatterpoint tournament there, which is four squads. So it's 16 models ready to go.
Are they already?
You can knock that up by February 3rd, I guess.
Yeah, probably.
How many?
I'm building them right now, so they'll likely be painted.
How do they build? Like I've never played with it. Like how compared to like Primaris Marine, how do they build?
They're broken into a few more pieces. The kits are really nice, I will say. Like it is. I also played Star Wars Legion, and that was kind of a PVC plastic in the initial release of that, which was a lot more rubbery compared to hard plastic.
Yeah.
Which they have now switched over to, I know. Shatterpoint is definitely using a much harder plastic. The mold lines are very minimal. The scale's a little bit larger. They're a 40 millimeter scale model.
Yeah. And
they're kind of they're more in line with Rebels, the Clone Wars, kind of that animated style.
Right.
So a little bit less realistic, a little bit more exaggerated kind of animation style, but they're really fun. Just tons of personality, great poses, and the models go together incredibly well. It's been a very satisfying experience so far.
Very cool. Very cool. I didn't mean to cut you off, Campbell. I thought you were saying something.
Oh, I was going to ask him what force he's building, just for those curious.
So the initial two units I'm going for are the Mandalorian options. So get the kind of the armor and her crew, and then Mando from the Mandalorian, and Clan Kryze with Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians of that is going to be one of the squads. And then I'm playing around with the other two squads, because you end up taking 4 squads to this event, which I'm playing around with either a bunch of Imperial shooty stuff, or kind of just go all in for like Maul and Dathomirians. And so I'll either do a very like melee focus list or a very shooty focus list. Cool. And I'm playing around with which of those I'm going to take still. But yeah, having fun with it though.
All right, Campbell, bring us across the line with some actual hobby progress here.
All right. Yeah, I've painted all of 6 models this month, but oh boy, what about that first one?
That is incredible, dude.
Last episode, I was talking about my Rogaldorn tank crew, and now I've got the tank to go with them. So I finished my Rogaldorn tank commander, Payback Pig. And this thing
what it says on the barrel.
Oh God, I've got it. I think right here, I've got like a calligraphy pen where I was just working on writing out Payback Pig to get it to
over and over again.
Yeah, because I was looking at a bunch of like World War II tanks and airplanes and so on.
This weathering
on the side.
This weathering looks so good.
You know, people can't read cursive anymore.
It's like the one skill I never thought I'd use in middle school again is writing in cursive, and here we are.
Here we are.
I had so much fun weathering this. Like
that's gorgeous.
When I painted it and highlighted it, and I was just at that stage. It's a big white Rogaldorn tank with some red stripes and so on. I got done highlighting it, and I'm like, I think this is my favorite vehicle I've ever painted. And that was before I even started putting transfers and weathering and all this other stuff on there. And I just spent days just with watered down, I think, Mornfang brown and Rhinox hide and all these other like ruddy browns, just getting these rust streaks and doing the mud coming out of the mud chutes and build up on the treads and so on.
What you just said something interesting, which was, this is my favorite tank I've ever painted. What was it about this tank that made that? Like, was it tactile? Was it what is it that?
Part of it is tactile, because like this tank just feels like a real tank in a way that a lot of more
a lot of 40K stuff doesn't.
Right, because it's like scaled right for infantry. It's a mix of like a Matilda and a Sherman if you're like a World War II tank person, and it has such a good presence. Like, it's a big honking tank. Yeah. It's like roughly the size of a Land Raider.
Can I tell you, they're intimidating on the table too. Like when one gets put out, I'm like, oh God, here we go. I'm like, oh no.
got some board presence.
Yeah.
I want to run 6 of them, but we'll see what happens. It seems really fun. I like committing to the bit, but I think also doing all the stowage on there, like the sandbags and the gas cans and all that stuff, just made it feel very real. Yeah. And once I got the transfers on there, it felt all that much better.
Which is something that I think I talked in a Patreon episode about armies that I painted and this kind of thing. And one of the things was Tasty Taste had come over. We were doing game days, and he had borrowed an Ultramarine army at one point, and that person who had painted that army, he had borrowed it, had used like gas cans and, rucksack, like all that stuff was kind of attached to the top, and it just added like something I'd never seen on a Rhino before. And I was like, oh, that's a really interesting idea. I mean, I don't know that Space Marines need sleeping bags, but they may use sandbags and that kind of thing, depending on what they're doing.
It gives it a sense of realism. It kind of gives it a sense of scale too.
Yes.
Because when you look at a Rhino in isolation, that could be the size of a shoebox or it could be the size of a building. You don't really quite know. When you put it next to other stuff, it's just something that
that's a really interesting
puts
point
it in the world.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. It's a good call.
Adds a layer of immersion also. Just
this thing, Campbell, you're weathering
war zone. You're unsupported. Yeah,
your weathering on this thing is off the charts cool, and it just goes so well with that color, that white color.
That's the thing. It's a blank canvas. It is just fun to throw reds and browns and red browns on there. Yeah, this was. I can't get over how much I love this thing. It's in a display cabinet downstairs, and I just look at it every single day.
It's a good thing you got to paint 5 more of them, apparently.
Precisely. It's a good thing I like this model so much. But it wasn't just this I painted. I also painted up a little Cadian command squad, which is an awful lot of work for 65 points. These guys were also like...
I think that's the theme of the army.
Yeah, it is the theme of the army.
That's how sisters feel, too.
Yeah, like I totaled up all my guard. I'm up to like 780, barring whatever point changes there are in the new book.
Can't even play 1,000-point game.
I can't even play a real game yet. And I don't even have the right stuff painted for a combat patrol, so I can't even do that. So all this stuff just looks real pretty behind glass for the time being. But yeah, the command squad is like the main officer, the body of the standard bearer, and the like veteran with the power fist. Those are all really easy. But the medic and the master vox person have so many straps and weird little ding dang doodads that they took forever to paint. So between that and the banner, which also took
your banner looks sick, dude.
Thank you.
That banner is so clean.
Oh, it's so good.
Much like that's my favorite tank. This is my favorite flag I've probably painted.
Yeah.
Even compared to the one I did for Grimaldus, because I love how that gold came out, and I'm very happy with
that was what caught my eye was the different shades of gold on it. Like as it's shadowed, and it's fantastic. Okay, Campbell,
is that a sculpted banner or is that all freehand?
It's sculpted. The text is freehand.
Right.
The
rest is all plastic sculpt.
Yeah.
Have you found
so clean? It looks just painted on.
Campbell, in the last, let's say 5 years, how much has your painting progressed from 5 years ago to today? Or are you still using the same techniques and stagnated? Or are you like, this is like, I've seen your 30K Ultramarines, right? I've seen your Black Templars, which are amazing looking, but this is like striking on another level, I think.
Well, every single time I do a project, I try to find some new thing to push.
Okay.
So in this case, what I've been trying to push is weathering, which is with the chipping, with the streaking and all that. And again, it's all acrylic. I'm not using like oils or anything like that too, because I'm too impatient and too anxious about using things that off gas. But with this, the banner stuff started coming up a lot, I think, with some Stormcast things. And I started kind of getting into figuring out ways to differentiate textures between like a real gold and a cloth gold.
Right.
And yeah, with this army, these are the things I'm pushing. And I feel like I've stagnated a lot of the time. And then I look at just one of these guardsmen next to, a Marine that took as much work 5 years ago. And yeah, there is a pretty marked difference.
Yeah.
And in that time, like 5 years ago, I wasn't using a wet palette yet. Or maybe I just started using it. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't doing as much with blends. I wasn't doing as much with layering. I was doing a lot more back then with just like layer, wash, highlight, cool, done. And now I've got more steps in between, which means my painting does take longer, but I'm much happier with the result.
It looks amazing, dude. Like this is really a standout. And the colors you've chosen for the army are not ones that you typically see, so it just makes it that much, that much more striking. It's Campbell, I'm blown away. Like, really, every time you reveal one of these things, I'm like, oh my God, look at that. That is incredible.
Thank you very much. My backlog is about to absolutely detonate with new deathcore stuff. So look forward to seeing more of some.
Hey, did you receive the stuff that we sent you? Josh and I sent you?
Okay. Yes, I did. Okay. And I'm going to be using those to convert up tank crews and stuff like that too. So I think I've got a lot of great coats and las guns in my
That new Deathcore Creed kit looks really good. The new box set that just came out.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Impressive.
Might be. I wonder if I can bash together a second squad of engineers. Anyway, just thinking out loud.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah, I mean, they weren't doing me any good. They were just sitting in a startup box, and I wasn't going to ever get to them. So
yeah, same.
All right, let's talk about games played. And I think the best way to go about this is, Campbell, for you to kind of briefly talk. We don't want to use up all your content you're going to do on Bagcast, but briefly talk about yours, because then Josh and my games are probably going to roll into the topic. The first topic, there's two topics really here, of the show, which is War on the Shore. So why don't we start with you, Campbell?
All right. Yeah, I'll keep mine pretty brief because, like you said, I don't want to just take half an hour off the podcast or keep you guys here until 9 o'clock. So I played.
These are the things professional podcasters think about, by the way.
It's rationing out your content. That's right. It's like when I'm talking to Dan in between episodes, and he's like, "Stop talking for the show.
You're wasting content." That's what we always say.
Yeah. Anyway, so I played 2 games with my Ultramarines because I have a Primaris Ultramarines army. I started in 8th edition that I painted up through 9th, and then when Templars got their release, I kind of pivoted back towards Templars. And I have not run these guys for years. I've played 70-something games in a row with my Templars.
Yeah.
I was getting real tired of just running basically the same builds.
You mentioned that last episode that you were kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm playing the same thing. And you were talking about changing it up. So here we see you changing it up a bit.
Yeah, so this is my first games using both Vanguard, Strike Force, and Gladius, which I hadn't used either. Again, I just used the Templar, mostly the Templar ones. And I've got to say, the change to Oaths of Moment, where you have +1 to wounding your Oath target, is so flippin' good. Like, I have a squad of 10 Hellblasters, and they just jump out, unload into a knight. It's gone.
Holy smokes.
Then the next turn, I overwatch into another knight. It's gone. I play against a Tau player. I had a squad of 3 Inceptors drop down, and they shot into an Oath unit of Kroot. It was a 20-man unit of Kroot. I'd killed like 5 models. They killed the other 19 because their 9 shots became 19 shots, and those just the +1 to wound and the twin link, they just chewed right through them. And because they were damaged too, even though those Kroot had a feel no pain, just mulched them. So I've got to say, for a lot of the edition, it's felt like, Templars, Blood Angels, Dark Angels are all Marines +1, and they very much have been. And with this change to Oaths, I don't know if that fully, brings it up to even there, but it brings it pretty close. Having +1 to wound against the thing you want dead is an amazing rule. I'm looking forward to trying. I'm looking forward to somewhat in bad taste playing my Templars as Codex Marines with no Templar units, just so I can try it out this other arrangement of units. Because a Repulsor Executioner.
That's how I'm running the Blood Angels right now for Sharks.
Yeah,
Blood Angels, no Blood Angels.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, I feel bad doing that because I love my Templar so much. Yeah, I'm still using my toys, whatever. But like, a Repulsor Executioner is a big, beautiful fail son. It is so good at rolling 2s to wound and not doing anything. But now, if it's like, I'm just going to shoot something that's oathed, so it's going to be hitting on 3s or 2s if it stands still, or it's Tech Marine, wounding on 2s, suddenly that giant honking laser cannon becomes something worth writing home about.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious how this is going to change things up that way. And I think Gilliman lets you oath a second target or something like that. And handing that out is really powerful. So I'm looking forward to trying this out. But over the course of these games, my short version is Hellblasters with Lieutenants, money. Inceptors, money. New Oath of Moment, fantastic. Eradicators, even with Marnius Calgar, get back in the dumpster. Does not do me any good. There's like some I don't remember what show it was, but some other like competitive 40K YouTube show or whatever is like Eradicators. So the last word in anti-tank. And yeah, that last word is no. They do not do anything.
Last word was you forgot your period.
Yeah, even against crisis suits, they were just bouncing off. But
didn't in the sentence.
Yeah, my 2 games went really well. I'm liking the new, even with my less than optimal quote unquote Ultramarines collection, that's most just kind of one of everything.
Yeah,
it's been doing really well in my local games.
Wow,
nice.
That's fantastic. Yeah. It's cool to see you branching out and trying something, else. Yeah. I mean, I think that's variety is the kind of the spice of life where this game is concerned. And
yeah, even if it's just another color of power armor, it does feel different. It does look different.
Yeah.
It has a different vibe. There's a certain je ne sais quoi you don't understand unless you are someone who has painted multiple armies, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, over to you guys.
All right. Josh, let's start with, so we're both going to War on the Shore in Hawaii.
Yep. Indeed.
Now, let me talk a little bit about how I approached this. I was not going to be there for the first game. I was arriving late. Doug Johnson, good friend of the show, also one of the owners of Table War, says to me, hey, why don't I come down and we'll play a game, and that'll be your first game since you're not going to make the first game. I said, why don't we just chalk it up to a win for you, Doug? and call it that. I've never beat Doug, and he's like, oh, don't be like that. I'm like, no, I go, first off, it's a long drive for you to come down here just to win. And I go, and second off, I go, you and I are playing a different game. The way I play and the way this group is playing is different than the way you play this game. He's like, I don't think that's true. And I go, listen, I'm going to War on the Shore. I'm going to play in a tournament. I'm not necessarily excited about playing a tournament. And I said, but, I'm going, but I'm telling you, I play differently than this event.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I thought a lot about that before I went out. And I said to myself, Campbell seems to like playing in tournaments. You need to give this a fair shake, and maybe you're going to discover that you want to get back in a tournament. I used to play tournaments. I mean, that's how I met Josh, basically. I used to play in tournaments. Yeah. I enjoyed them. It was fine, but I kind of changed. It is a long story. But anyway, point being,
Fifth edition tournament scene was the same as a casual tournament scene.
And so I was like, you know what? I need to go in this with an open mind. Maybe I'm going to discover that I really do enjoy the way this plays. So, Josh, why don't you talk about your first game? Because I didn't play a first game.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, Doug did not take the win. Like, he went and played his first game. So just long story short, like
he played a proper game.
We ended up not playing. Doug played a proper game. In the end, as you know, if you've looked online, Doug Johnson won the War on the Shore. Shocker. And he's a very, very good player of Warhammer 40,000. So, Josh, talk about your first game.
He went 5-0. Didn't take the easy win with Carl.
No.
So game one, he could have. Didn't need it. Game one, there was an option, which was a really fun option of you could make a charity donation to challenge a player. And this was the only round that they really allowed this. So Peter made a $20 charity donation to call me out for game one of War on the Shore. So this is Peter at his Gene Stealer Cult.
A friend of yours,
really,
Campbell.
really fun game. Yeah. Campbell, you know him for a while, and he's such a great guy. It was like a real pleasure of meeting him. This game was definitely a highlight.
And his wife
just
was
meeting
absolutely
Peter and Kat,
Kat is so fun. Like they're both a fun couple. Yeah.
Like we've gone camping with them.
Good
we've
people.
Played tons of games with them. They're delightful. They're wonderful.
Absolutely.
People.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, Peter and I had a really fun game. This was the first game, so we were both a little bit slower. Gene Stealer Colt is a little bit slower army to play just because they have so many bodies. So say the only downside of playing Peter game 1 is that we actually ran out of time, and we're having so much fun in this game. I wanted to play more of the game. And round 1 was the only round that there was not additional time that you could play afterwards. Like we had round 1 done, 30-minute lunch, then right into round 2, where every other game throughout the weekend, there was like time that you could play out more turns if you wanted to. Anyways, we had a really fun back and forth game. Just massive piles of stuff dying. Peter's brand new model does a psychic attack and blows up his brain. All the classic things. His Lehman Russes are rolling so many dice and doing absolutely nothing. I melted a bunch of his stuff. The Land Raider Redeemer had a lot of fun just going against Gene Stealer Colt and just killing a bunch of things. And game ended with a Land Raider Redeemer on his home objective, just about to barbecue everything he had left. I did a pretty good job of taking out all of his big threats, and he took out a lot of my kind of my melee assault armies, like something like 20 flamers in a unit just melted my assault intercessors, which is one of my big like punch units. But then they all die immediately in response to shooting or a Land Raider Redeemer or something. I don't remember the specifics of how they died, but they were retaliated upon pretty quickly. Game ended with his cult reserves were just coming back in, but he basically had kind of 3 small units of reserves that he was recycling. But I had all my big stuff left, all my tanks, both Land Raiders, the Redeemer on his home objective again, kind of right where I wanted to be. So yeah, had an incredibly fun game, but it did end in my favor. Again, would have loved to have played this out to its natural conclusion. But I think it would have continued to go in my favor, but just super fun game. Peter's such a great guy, and he's wearing his Swole Arm Emperor, tank top, and just had a really great time. Yeah.
I'm glad you two got to play.
Lovely opponent. Yeah, really, really good to meet him. Glad we got to play, especially first game. That was a great kind of setting of the pace for the rest of the GT to come.
So my first game. So I'm not playing to win the tournament, but I am playing to go to get good games in. Meet new people, support the charity, blah blah blah. My first game was against John and his Necrons. John was not at the table when it first set up, so I had to go through the process of setting up the table and the terrain on the table, which is all, here's exactly the measurements, you're setting everything up. You've heard my thoughts on tournament terrain and its representation on the table, and this is exactly what we expect. There's the footprint of the thing and then a couple walls. Now the terrain was fine. Like they did a great job getting everything printed up, painted up, assembled, everything. Yeah. I mean, from a standpoint of this is what it comes to a tournament, this is exactly right. So I'm setting everything up, and I'm trying to remain positive here, but this is again not how we play, and so I will talk a little bit about that. But as I'm setting up the table, Shell's standing there kind of just hanging out because she just wanted to hang out. She's watching, and I'm setting everything up, and she's kind of helping point out, I think it's this footprint. And I look up at her and I go, I hate this. I absolutely
the trigonometry face.
I hate it 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. But whatever. We get it all set up. All right. John shows up. He's got his Necrons. His Necron list consists of Necrons along with the, what's
Silent King.
The Silent King. First time I've played against the Silent King. That thing is a beast, man. I mean, and everything he does helps everything else. And this is where I first discover, wow, I don't have a lot of open lanes of fire here. In fact, I have none. Like there's literally like, why bother having guys that can shoot 36, 48 inches when the furthest you can see is 20 inches. So, it quickly became apparent. I'm like, okay, so I'm doing my best to try to get things into position, bring my Land Raiders forward firing. I kill some stuff, but like he basically neuters my army fairly quickly, taking out my Vindicator and a few other things just because I couldn't really bring them to bear. And so like decidedly in John's favor. Like John was a fine opponent. It was fine. Again, it was a game of 40K that you are playing. It is a matched game of 40 play. Literally that description is it. Both sides of the table are exactly matched. Everything is matched. You are playing in a maze where you're just driving kind of around a maze and moving your guys sometimes through a maze to get into range to shoot other guys. So I wasn't like feeling it. And like, and again, I'm running into, here's an exact tournament list, but it became very evident to me. I was like, oh, so this is why when people, if you're on a forum or a group or something and you say, people are, I'm looking for anti-tank. Well, have you thought about Havocs? Havocs are terrible. I seem to do fine with Havocs. Why are they terrible? Oh, this is why they're terrible. Because you're talking about Havocs in a situation where they cannot bring one of their greatest strengths to bear, which is their range. Okay, cool. In a tournament environment, I can see why this unit is not well regarded. Got it. Okay. But this is a list I've brought, so I'm going to stick with this list going forward. So I get just stomped. I mean, John was fine. It was great. It was a tournament game. I got stomped. I had a good time during it. I mean, he's like, oh, I roll really bad. I'm like, okay, you ain't seen nothing yet. And that's true, and he was like, oh, that's a really bad roll. I'm like, you don't say. And I
play him the next day and he will, he confirms that he rolls poorly and you rolled much worse.
Yes,
There's always a bigger fish.
I don't, here's the thing. Like, I'm really at this point, I'm like, yeah, okay. Oh, look, a 4-inch chart, huh? Yeah. Well, that's guaranteed. Don't say those words.
Oh, no.
Like, never. Josh has seen it, and
never tell me the odds.
And I don't want to blame dice. Like, I was clearly outmatched in strategy and the list building and the structure of the list for a tournament environment. Like, my dice were that's all tertiary to why I lost this game. But it was just fun to see. Yeah, let me outdo you in the bad dice roll department. And that did happen. So first game down. Okay. I think Josh, that was the second game of the day. So I had no more games that day, but you go into your second game against who?
My second game was against Blake, and Blake had a Tyranid army there.
To be clear, this is not Blake. This is not Blake from
not from Life After the Cover Save.
Different
Blake.
Somebody who actually plays
Blake
40K.
Who lives in Hawaii. Yes. Not on a podcast to my knowledge about anything.
You never know.
Blake was he probably is,
Was he a middle-aged guy? He's got a podcast.
38, 40-year-old.
He's got a podcast.
40-year-old white guy. He's on a podcast. Yeah. Blake and I had a really fun game. He's a great opponent, good-looking army. He had a list with several large bugs, and I have not played against a lot of the new Tyranid, the big Tyranid stuff. Because mostly when I've played against Tyranids in recent editions, it's been against Carl, and you don't have a lot of the newer stuff just because it's not an army you're playing regularly. So there's a couple kind of fun surprises of learning what this thing does. I played just kind of a smart game, very aggressive out the front, just running everything up the middle, getting charges where I can. Got lucky with I don't remember the name of the big. It's like the kind of biggest. What is it? It's a huge melee monster.
Okay, not the Forge World one, is it? Just a big plastic?
No, not Forge World, but just one of the largest plastic kits, like assault focus specifically. Yeah. It's not one of the like Hive Tyrant kind of variants. It's more of a like a 4-legged kind of rhino looking.
Gotcha.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know the Tyranid names, but got one really lucky thing with a Ballistus Dreadnought overwatching, rerolling the hits, and ended up getting a ton of wounds. So I took this thing down from full health to 1 wound left Overwatch, which like completely swung a whole flank of the table. Like it's his like biggest melee threat in the game. It's like on one Overwatch, it's down to 1 wound and ends up crumpling pretty quickly thereafter. Had a really fun game. It was tight kind of back and forth, really close till about turn 3, and then I started pulling ahead after turn 3 as his options just started kind of dying, and the attrition went in my favor with the more elite Marines pulling the lead there. We had a really good conversation just after the game too, and he's like just a really nice guy, and he was like, yeah, like he was trying to think, and he's like, you played a perfect game. Like, I can't think of a single mistake that you made, especially against like not having faced Tyranids. There was multiple things that I just had never encountered before, just because it's not in our kind of local group. But it ended up having a fun game. And like, I always approach a game. I'm never just trying to win a game out the gates, but I want to play a smart game. I want to play a tactical game, and I want to play my army intelligently and like give a good game to my opponent. And that's always my goal, is to like have fun and give a good game. And this worked out well. So had a great game. No mistakes. Learned a few things about some new Tyranids, and end up grabbing the victory, putting me at an incredible undefeated 2-0. I was the very lowest of the 2-0s here, though. So
it's amazing. We both have.
And honestly,
scores.
going in is like, going into this game, it's like, okay, like if I win my first 2 games, I'm honestly hoping that I lose my 3rd game, because I think the more games I win, the less fun I'm going to have. I had no illusion whatsoever that I was ever in this tournament as a kind of top finisher from the get-go. So I was like, all right, I just want fun games. If I win a couple, fantastic. I don't want to win a bunch though. Like I want to lose in the middle there to just get me in that middle pack and let me have some fun games for the rest of the GT.
That pressure ratchets up the more successive wins in a row you get, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a high compliment. Being told you basically played a perfect game and they can't think of anything they would do differently. That's a high compliment. That rules.
And Josh is good player, Campbell. Like, I think you and he, I don't know if you and he have played a game.
We played Necromunda once.
Okay.
And I read the mission rule wrong, so I won.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, I want to play Josh in 40K.
But I think you guys would really enjoy that game. I think Josh provides a challenge. Every time Josh and I play a game, it's really interesting. Like a lot of tournament focused players, competition players, I would say, are not able to turn it off a little bit. Josh is able to like turn that off and focus on, like, here's this narrative we're trying to build, and I'm not going to
focus on some cinematic moments.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, some cool stuff that happens. Yeah, and I'm never trying to win a game with the list that I'm bringing.
Right.
That's just because I'm not playing
that game
in competition like that.
You are not playing. We are. Playing,
I'm not playing that game.
We are playing a different game. We truly are. Within 40K, there's so many ways to play, and we are playing a different game. So speaking of playing a different game, I step up to my next game the next day, and I'm playing Mike and his Imperial Guard. Mike has like one unit that's not fully painted, so he's not getting the 10 points for fully painted. I tell him, don't worry about that. You're going to be fine. And honestly, at first I tell him, look, I'm not picky about it. Again, I'm not here to win. I'm here to make friends and play. Mike had a really interesting army. He had some units sitting in the back, two cannon type units that were sitting in the back that could fire, with no line of sight, which, as we've already determined in the way these tables are set up, that's a huge benefit. I might want to consider that. So he sits back there with those two things, but he also has these little remote control tanks.
Oh, the Cyclops?
Yes.
Oh, it's so cute. I love those things.
Which is that what they're called? Which were interesting. Yeah. Like they could detonate, and if they detonate, it causes mortal wounds, right?
Yeah.
And so
an old Forge World unit. I'm actually surprised it's still around.
Yeah, and actually, what I thought of is you could make, like, if you can't get those from Forge World anymore, which I don't think you can. You could easily use like a Legions Imperialis.
Oh yeah, no, just grab a Spartan, cut the las cannons off, and put it on a 40 mil base.
There you go. Boom.
You've got a Cyclops.
Boom.
They
were interesting, in the sense that he was able to use them to control my movement on the board because I was like, oh, God, I don't want to get near these things with my Land Raider. All right, and I wasted time blowing them up, and finally when I blew them up, I caused him a bunch of wounds too, but I also damaged one of my, I think my Demon Prince took a hit from him. This was a more interesting game than my game against the Necrons because recognizing after my first game, well, these guys aren't going to do crap in this scenario, these havocs that I have here to sit in the bag.
That table layout specifically can go into a little corner and die. That terrain layout 8, there is 0 line of sight.
Nothing.
It's like
nothing. There is a like if you turn your tape measure on its side.
A millimeter
you can
from angle to angle.
Yes.
There's one line of sight on that entire board. It is terrible.
There was also some confusion over what can and can't shoot out of cover when it's a vehicle concern, but we straightened that out with Mike, so he understood there. Like, okay, because he had been told by his opponent the previous round, oh, he was doing it wrong. Turned out he was not. His opponent had been doing it wrong the previous round. When he go ahead.
One thing you missed, which was before game 1, is that there is like the official Warhammer official way to do it, and then there's the way the Hawaiian local crew does it, and that is slightly different. For like if you are fully in a building, then you can see out. Where if you're not, you can't see all the way through it. Different parts of it, and I don't know enough of either to know which one is the official and which one.
What I gotta tell you is, if I wasn't allowed to shoot, even though I was like partially in terrain with like stuff sitting out that could see stuff, I was ready to quit at that point because I was like, well, this is like on this table, this is ridiculous. Like I can't. There's nowhere I can't.
Yeah, there's no
line a Land Raider in some terrain. It was so. Anyway. Based on the last game, I was just like, you know what? Super aggressive guy. Here we go. Like everything just rushed forward. Abaddon got in, got to slaughter some stuff. The Terminators got to slaughter some stuff. The Demon Prince got to slaughter some stuff. But by then it was too late. Like I'd lost on points because he was just able to. This is one thing I've struggled with previously. It's like I don't really have any scout units. I don't have that kind of thing. People have talked about bikes, but I really just don't like the aesthetic of bikes and the feel of bikes in the game. So it's just
they're kind of old.
It's just kind of not for me. But even if they were new, I'm like, yeah, bikes are just not a thing for me. I mean, with the Eldar, I think they're cool because they're like these jet. It's just not for me. But whatever. Again, there I go. And there's a difference, right? Like I'm intentionally hindering myself because I'm like, well, yes, I could use those rules, but I don't like them. I don't like the way they look. So this was actually a pretty entertaining game though. Mike was a great opponent. We got through the whole game. I got through both of my whole game. The first one went really quick. And by the end of it, he had a pretty good lead. Campbell, you'll appreciate, like nobody uses the cards. They all just use the Goonhammer app, for tracking everything. Yeah. Cool.
That's awesome. Also, no one can buy the cards because
nobody can buy the cards because Josh.
July.
So,
and they're going for $160 on eBay.
Ridiculous. So,
don't feed the scalpers.
Yeah. So we played through this game again, incredibly frustrated with the terrain situation. To me, I'm just like, this is not. It doesn't look good on the table. Not that they haven't painted competitive terrain to look good. They do. But what it isn't representative of what the battlefield should look like.
I have a question for you, though, because you're playing Chaos Marines.
Yep. Chaos
Marines are great in hand-to-hand.
Yeah.
You should be like, all this line of sight blocking terrain.
I'd love
fantastic.
It. I should love it.
You should love it. I'm just like, I would. It's one of the reasons why I've had a lot of fun as a Black Templars players, because I can just stage behind cover or hide stuff until I want to bust out, or park a vehicle in terrain and then, run out the wall or whatever after the fact and keep myself safe from all that, big shooting. So I'd figure you'd be in pretty
except I have a lot of shooty stuff in my army.
Yeah.
I have Forge Fiends. I have Vindicators. I have Land Raider with las cannons. I mean, I use that to deploy, Abaddon and the Terminators. Again, going back to my earlier statement about Chosen. I mean, it was good. I'm glad I went through this experience because like I learned, oh, I see why this would be a better unit, but I also see why in isolation, when people talk about tournaments and they talk about particular units or this unit's garbage, I'm like, hey, it's not garbage. Like, you could do this and that. And I no, in a tournament setting where you have this limited, I understand why that unit is undervalued in by players, not
within this framework. This unit is suboptimal.
Yes, yeah, totally makes sense. Like, and this is where it was really dawning on me. Like, I'm like, I see, I understand why people are saying this.
But I'll say that's also where there's the opportunity where it's like people write something off and you go, hold on, I'm going to lean into that. No one sees it coming, and you're able to do something really interesting.
Yeah, potentially, for sure.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're going with just like my army is all tactical Marines, no, you're boned. But like something like Forge Fiends, I don't know how much luck you had with those, but a Forge Fiend coming out of strategic reserves, or two of them coming out
could be fantastic.
They mulch everything. They are the sword of Damocles that my local Iron Warriors player hangs over my head, and he and I are like neck and neck when it comes to competitive gaming. Like we've placed like 9th and 10th in tournaments. Like right next to each other. Like he's a really good player because he has a good understanding of where to use these units that maybe not everyone thinks are great. You know what? He uses Havocs against me sometimes too. And they can be a problem. Yeah, but they are very fragile. So
I'd love to talk to him about that.
Yeah.
The other thing, Mike was a great opponent. He did a great job of board control, not only forcing, me with the little Cyclops, but also he was able to spread his stuff out. IG can do this as well as a few other armies. He was able to spread stuff out, so I really didn't have any great options for dropping my obliterators into his backfield. When I did drop my obliterators, unlike the previous game where they really just whiffed on everything, they did some van damage here and were able to start causing some problems for him. In the end, like I destroyed a lot of stuff, but that wasn't really the objective of the mission so much. And so, but I had a good time. Mike was a fun enough opponent, that, it was great. Again, and here also, of course, Doug comes around. Oh, what do you think? I'm like, I hate this terrain. Like I hate it. And I tried to go into it. And he's like, oh, well, why, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Doug, again, we are playing a different game. And he wanted desperately to come on the show and have this debate, but it's not a debate because he's not understanding what I'm saying, or choosing not to understand because he's so tournament focused on this. He doesn't grasp that it's okay. I mean, again, let me be clear. Like, this is fine. Like, this is how tournaments are run. So I choose not to play in tournaments, and that's okay. But we'll get more into this as this progresses. But Todd is asking how the game's going. I'm like, well, I'm not a fan of how this is laid out. And so fortunately he kind of listened, and we'll talk in a bit about my next game, which is convincingly against Peter. So I paid $20 to play Peter in the third round. Peter he had lost every game. I had lost every game. It's not like it was challenged for the top tables.
Yeah. You guys weren't affecting the standings.
Here's my $20. Let's get a fun game in. So anyway, Josh, what about
your good cause?
Yeah, what about your next game?
So my third game was against Jonathan and his Necrons that you had played the day before. So this was Silent King list. This was on terrain layout 8, which it can just like go into a corner and die because there is zero line of sight for it. My army is about half assault and half shooting, so I am pretty reliant on that shooting because my assault stuff is all very glass hammery. It's assault intercessors, thunderhammer terminators, and jump pack intercessors. So it hits hard, but it dies very easily in retaliation if it's just kind of left out there. And with this terrain loadout, it's like I can play a very cagey game and not do anything for probably 4 turns of the game because of the terrain layout, or I can just run up there and try and make a game happen. So I opted to do that. Again, not sad if I lose game 3 here, so I don't go into that 3-0 bracket and become a tryhard at that point. I was like, I'm going to run stuff forward. I'm going to make this game happen. And I will either have a great success or I will pay the price for being aggressive. Up to turn 3 is a very, very close game. Had a really just good conversation stuff with Jonathan in general. We were having a really good chat on side outside of the game, just meeting somebody new and catching up and all that. Very close game until about turn 3, and then I had a terrible secondary draw. The dice abandoned me, and my aggressive approach to the game definitely started to backfire all at once. I made one mistake here, and this was against the Silent King again. First time I already had ever played against the Silent King, even though I'm a Necrons player. I'm not a special character player, so I don't have the Silent King in my collection. But I did throw a Land Raider Redeemer, had a multi-melt on it, and I had just the one shot into the Silent King, where I still had plans to shoot him with a Ballistus and a Thunder Strike and some other things like that. But because he has this little sneaky, you shoot me, I move 6 inches away. And there was no line of sight on that board whatsoever. I had one shot lined up. Yeah. So I shoot. That's like the one mistake, and it ends up being a pretty pivotal moment of the Silent King. Takes 2 damage from a multi-melt because I rolled terrible on the damage for it, but then he sneaks away 6 inches and then completely avoids the fire from the Ballistus and the Thunder Strike that would be coming into him also. So it's I just can't take out the Silent King there, and then my army just starts collapsing. Thunderhammer, Storm Shield Terminators on a charge, killed one Scorpec Destroyer. Ooh. One. So it's just a bunch of things go wrong at the same time, and Jonathan ends up tabling me at that within it takes full 5 turns, but he does table me on that one. But at the same time, still had a really fun game and just a great interaction with him as a player. So I've never had more fun being tabled by an opponent. So
he tabled me as well.
That's a good time.
I didn't mention that, but I was tabled in that game as well. It was just.
There's
nothing.
The only game I get tabled in, but still really enjoyed the game. It was that terrain loadout. It's I can either play a super cagey game and nothing happens, or I'm just gonna let's have a fun game. I'm gonna throw it out there, and if I lose, that's totally fine. I don't care. I'd
rather be doing something and
so
lose
I went for that, but
than just sit back and hide the whole game.
There's something that feels really trying to remember a word here. I don't say antithetical, but just it doesn't feel right to just be yes, my Black Templars, Carcharodons, whatever, are gonna just hang out for 2 turns and hope you make a mistake. That doesn't feel right.
Gonna sit on the objective.
Yeah. And otherwise it's cool, I'm gonna run out into no man's land, because I don't remember the layouts by number, but I know there are some where it's super dense on either side, and in the middle has this awful no man's land where anything that goes there is just going to get murdered.
This is the one with the 4 things that are all diagonal in no.
There is 0 no man's land.
Okay.
In the center of the table, there's literally no visibility.
Yep, I see that one. Yeah. There's basically no way to get there's 2 straight lines you could do for shooting it.
Yeah, and it's literally if you turn your measurement on its side. So my next game,
it's about a 2 degree angle.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So, which I was able to get a couple shots off down. My next game was, as I said, I bribed the judges to play against Peter. Now, Todd and Amory, who were running, Amory did so much work for this event. He really made it such a great event for everybody. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I was having fun. It was fine. It's just not the way I play. But I wanted to go try it. I wanted to experience it to see maybe I am missing something. Never listen to what other people say, as says the podcaster, without experiencing it yourself. Go try it yourself and see. One of the first things when I was getting out of basic training, our drill instructor said, you're going to go to a unit and there's going to be a guy there who's this place sucks and this sucks and this sucks. Don't listen to that guy. Develop your own opinion. I think that's very important for everybody to do. So I went to go develop my own opinion here. And you should too. Don't listen to me. You may love this environment, right? So Todd had listened, and Peter was again not winning anything. And so they were like, "Do you guys mind if we change up the terrain on your table?" And we're both like, "Please do, please do." So they set up a table that it was a little more open, a little more flexible from what everybody else was playing, and we played our own unique. Like we played the same mission, but on that table, both of us. And Campbell, I would love for you to confirm this with Peter, but I think both of us had a much better experience. And this game I won, and I'm not, I didn't have a better experience because I won. I had a better experience because Peter was able to do more things. I was able to do more things, and it was Peter and his beautiful army. I mean, the thing Josh didn't really touch on is every model that Peter has is like it changed in some way. It is.
He doesn't field stock models.
No, and it's
no,
and it's really a kind of Gene Sealer cult, but IG converted. Convert. Yeah, it's fantastically beautiful.
All of his vehicles are named after like a craft beer and lovingly converted to be very Ketchikan style. There's just foliage and greenery coming out of all the bases, things like that. Peter won best painted and the wooden spoon. So like that tells you the kind of guy he is.
Without a doubt.
What part of the hobby he's in here for.
He is also a real life Catachan.
Yeah.
Yes.
a great guy, great opponent, a great game. Like, I think we both had fun this game and got to do a lot of things and, respond to each other. And it was just, I had an absolute blast playing Peter. I'm really glad I was playing Peter because first off, I really wanted to. His army was beautiful. It was a fun game, but when I went and looked at like the top tables, everybody looks so freaking serious, and I'm like, Warhammer is not serious business to me. It's just fun. And again, it's a different expectation. Like I'm sure those guys walked away from that event going, that was a great event. The reality is at the top table, somebody won and somebody lost. And the guy who lost was probably not as thrilled as the guy who won. Okay, that's competition. That's the way it works. If that floats your boat, do it. I think I was so excited that I got to take a break from that and just play a game of 40K with Peter and connect with somebody who we laughed and joked and didn't matter what was happening. Like when my guys were like, he did some damage as well. I mean, Abaddon had to teleport back up to the battle barge, because he ate it, and it's, I think, so I finished this game. I bowed out the next day. I was like, I'm done. Like I've learned what I need to learn. I'm good. I got to play somebody I wanted to play. I'm good.
Research complete. Yeah.
Amory was excited that I dropped out because somebody else had dropped out and he was going to have to play. And he's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to play. And so, because he was so busy running the rest of the tournament, like to realistically have him be the pitch hitter was probably not the right move. So I'm really glad I got to play that game with Peter. It really made me go, okay, yeah, I am playing a hobby. I enjoy a whole bunch and I'm playing an opponent that was a lot of fun. So I thought it was going to be this year, but I guess next year they're going to make their way down from the Pacific Northwest down to Mexico. And I was like, you got to come by the house and hang out. And so they're going to do that. So, it was a fantastic game with Peter, which I absolutely loved. So that was my experience there. Josh, what was your last one like? Or last couple actually?
Game 4 was the first time I'd ever played against Custodes, and this was Kevin and his Custodes.
Custodes.
Custodes. The
Robute
in the custards. I always pronounce custodes wrong. In my head, it's just custodes. So
correcting you for the audience. Who will correct you if I don't?
I'll be wrong. This was again, unfortunately, the same terrain layout. So the inside tables were all terrain layout 8, which again, I think I've made my feelings clear on how much I hate this terrain layout. I had a
table. My God,
I only had two for me, but Carl had one also, and that same layout. Yeah. So it's 2 games in a row, same terrain, because they had inside tables and outside tables, and just to make it easy, the inside tables stayed the same, the outside tables
for one round. Like
so day 2, I was inside for both games, so I was just stuck on this terrain loadout, which I just absolutely hated. It was a really fun matchup, though. I'll say the aggressive Sharks and Custodes, like it was a brutal game. I think end of the game, I had like 5 models left, and he probably had like 4 models left.
So he had almost 4 models Custodes.
Yeah. So I barely touched him. It was a brutal game. Like we just basically met in the middle and just murdered each other because we couldn't shoot anything. So it's like the tanks killed each other, finding that one angle of degree that they had line of sight, and they like my anti-tank stuff killed his anti-tank stuff and vice versa. And then everything else just met in the middle, and turns out Custodes hit really hard and are very durable. So he ended up taking the victory, but it was a very close game, very brutal game. And I'd say the thing that swung the game was like turn 3, maybe even top of turn 4. I had a chaplain that had assaulted all the way across the board, like killed through a unit. This is my jump pack intercessor chaplain who had been attached to that unit. I made it all the way to his home objective, and he's swinging. He has Sisters of Silence on his 2 kind of backfield objectives, holding those units. And between it was like scouts, the jump pack chaplain attacks, and something I don't remember all the things that I stacked, but he had to make 15 4-up saves in a row.
Whoa.
Just to kill one Sister of Silence to like swing it, like it would have swung the points, like it kept me in the game. I would say would have kept me in there. So he made 14 out of 15 in a row. And then he command rerolled that 14, the 15th to be a success. So he made with one command point, made 15 4-up saves in a row to keep this one Sister of Silence alive, keeping the home objective in his control, denying me all these points. And then like everything just started falling apart after that. And I was like, oh my God, I did kill her in turn 5. But after that, I was like, this game's done.
I don't know.
But a really fun game. He was like
the same way I do. But like when an important objective like that and the person rolls like the 14th save and fails the 15th, and you're like, thank God. And then they're like, I'm going to command point reroll that. I'm just like so demoralized. I'm like, no.
Yeah. When he rerolled and succeeded at the reroll, I was like, oh my God, how did this happen?
There's definitely like a confirmation bias thing there, but it's definitely the thing where if I fail 1 out of 14 saves, I'm going to fail that again when I reroll it.
I'm going to reroll the same number I just rolled.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm going to
reroll that 1 into a 1 every time.
Precisely. Yeah.
And I know it is, but
brutal.
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously it goes both ways, but you'd only remember the times it really gets you.
Yeah. So that was a pretty extreme swing. Again, it's a super fun game. Kevin was a great opponent. Really enjoyed. Great looking Custodes army. And again, first time ever playing Custodes, like realizing how durable and how hard they hit back. That's the big thing. Like I could hit him pretty hard and do some serious damage, but the clap back from him was just devastating to me, even if I had killed, half a unit. So like the thing I learned from this game is if I play Custodes again, like I really just need to focus unit by unit even more so than I did, just like because they're effective until they're gone.
Especially if
but yeah, again, very, very fun game. Yeah, he had three squads of the regular Custodes, all led by some whatever the captain guy that gives them sustained and all that. So like they were doing work, and then popping stratagems to give them a feel no pain or something like that. Wow. And they're already so durable, so many wounds. They're tough, but it was a very fun game. So great game. I did end up losing that one, so I'm 2-2 at this point, but have had 4 really fun games, which is nice. More than I expected to say going into a competitive GT.
Very cool. And your last game?
My last game was against Ben and his Chaos Knights, and this was a game that I was not excited to play because it was 13 Armiger War Dogs. And actually ended up having a very, very good game. It was a lot of fun. I would say that the not fun moment of the game was every single War Dog had Havoc missile launchers. So that's like 13 D6 indirect shots being fired at my scouts holding a back objective throughout the course of the game. They're going to die to that. There's nothing I can do about that. So
it was an interesting army.
They held that.
It was an interesting army. And I saw it the first time I saw it as I was walking around looking at armies. I was like, oh, I don't think I have an answer for this.
Yeah, it's the all war dog army is hard to deal with because they're very self-sufficient because they all hit on 2s, which is wild.
They all hit on 2s.
They're all toughness 10, which is just that crucial 1 pip break point that makes them very hard for a lot of things to do.
Las cannons, it will
precisely
wound,
13-9. There's a lot of things that wound them on 3s or 4s, but T10 makes them extra tough. And you can focus one down, but they're not that expensive. There's 8 more where that came from.
Yeah,
right.
It's a hard army.
The OC on them was the surprising thing because they're each OC 8 or 9.
Yeah,
so they hold objectives very well.
Wow. Sounds to me like I need.
So my army actually has pretty good answers for it because the Oath of Moment getting me +1 to wound and a Thunder Strike. So with Land Raider. With last games, I was not on terrain loadout 8 finally, so I actually had some good lines of sight. I could shoot and stuff. I could kill some dogs. Land Raider, Oath of Moment, Thunder Strike, Ballistus, pretty good answers to take out probably 3 war dogs that turn off shooting, and then maybe 1 from assault. So
nice.
I ended up killing 9 of the 13 war dogs. So I did some pretty good work getting through them. I had one turn where everything just went wrong in just the wrong ways, though. I had to pretty aggressively get myself in position to get these things, and then the damage dice just did not show up. Having a Ballistus and a Thunderstrike bring a war dog down to 1 wound and not killing it. It's just bad damage rolls, and there's nothing I could do about how the dice went that way. There was multiple. This was turn. Bottom of turn 3, I had set up myself to take out 4 war dogs in a turn with some assaults and some good shooting, concentrated overlapping fire, Ballistus and Thunderstrike really taking care of one thing, Land Raider and units with Oath of Moment taking care of another thing, then a really solid assault over here, and ended up just doing absolutely nothing. Didn't kill anything where I on decent dice should have been very able to take care of all 3 of these things. And he had a mix of the kind of assaulty war dogs and then the Melta war dogs. Yeah. And when the Melta war dogs didn't die, and I had to put myself in aggressive positions to make sure they would have died, and they should have died, his clapback hurt very much. So my vehicles melted very quickly to Melta guns. Surprising. They're very good Melta guns. I think they're Melta 4, Melta 6. They hit hard.
Holy
they hit.
Smokes.
So, yeah,
it's pretty gross.
Yeah. So I ended up losing this one, but it was still a really fun game and fun experiences, very tactical back and forth. And he didn't have a lot left at the end of the game, and I did not have a lot left either. So it was a fun, brutal, bloody game. Made him pay for it, but he did clinch it in the end.
Yeah. Bottom line, Doug Johnson won the event. There was one point where he was playing this opponent. I walked over to Amory. I go, "How's Doug doing?" Amory goes, "Well, he's playing the Chaos Knights guy." I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You see any Chaos Knights on the table?" I go, "No." He goes, "That's how Doug's doing." So Doug is an excellent orc player, and he's played him for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, listen, talking about the event in general, right? The venue was fantastic. The facilities were, it was like you were at camp. It was a YMCA.
It was
camp.
summer camp for adults, for 40K adults.
Literal nerd summer camp in January.
Shell absolutely.
Shell and I had a yurt,
but it's Hawaii.
Dude, that's the time to go. January, February is the time for
it was perfect.
Yeah. The weather was great. It rains occasionally, but that's Hawaii. It rains and stops raining, rains, stops raining. When you're snorkeling, it doesn't matter. Scuba diving doesn't matter. But when you're playing 40K, we were in.
I can't play 40K and snorkel at the same time.
No.
And if you have, write in to carl@theindependentcharacters.com. We want you on the show.
Loopy, I don't need your pictures.
Loopy has played in a swimming pool
on a floating,
which is pretty awesome.
So, there's the main
floating table.
The main gang on the Badcast server has played A Song of Ice and Fire on floaties in a lake. Nerds be nerds.
It was organized incredibly well. Todd did a great job of briefing everybody. Like every breakfast, lunch, and dinner, he'd make sure everybody was aware of what was going on. Emery did a fantastic job of really running the tournament. Like,
did so much work, so much organization, logistics, getting rides, people to airports. Like he put so much blood, sweat, tears, and time into that.
Yeah.
Good job, buddy.
And really, really good job. And I mean, he's just such a great guy. And he really embraced the whole like Ohana Hawaii thing where it was really about, making sure everybody had a good time. Even, like I said, I wasn't trying to be Debbie Downer and I wasn't trying to bitch or complain. But when you ask me, oh, well, how do you like it? I go, this table sucks. I'm going to tell you, it's not for me. So I took away from that a really good, like, it was a great learning experience for me. Like I didn't want that to be the answer. Like I wanted the answer to be, Carl, you've been missing out on this great way that you might enjoy. Turns out, nah, it's not really for me. And so, as we kind of go into how it's different for us here, I want to kind of lean back to what we have said in the past, Campbell, where you and Dan were covering competitive 40K and how everybody comes with the same objective. They understand what they are getting into. They came to win. That's the objective. You build a list to try to win. You play your best. You're polite to your opponent. You have good sportsmanship, but you're really there to win. Everybody's on that same sheet of music. It's very easy to grasp. What I will try to explain later, and as we talk through kind of our meta is the wrong word, but I guess it's terrain meta or
just how you play
style, our style.
Your
local
mindset
flavor.
style.
Yeah. You'll see, hopefully by the end, why it's different for us and why we find that enjoyable. So yeah. Anything else we want to talk about? Real quick, talking with Peter, I think it was Peter, at one point, we were talking about the Tzeentch demons detachment, the scintillating legion.
The scintillating legion,
yeah. And he was like, I was like, after talking about it, I was like, I could see how they would do better in this situation than in where I've been playing, like how I've been playing. They have this thing that lets them pass through terrain for like much more important in this type of environment. And Peter was like, yeah, they're low key. Actually, people are telling me they're low key pretty good in tournament play. And I'm like, oh, I could see why. I can see why. The other thing going into this, as I talked about that discussion with Doug earlier, and he's like, oh, well, what's Josh bringing to the tournament? And I said, he's bringing Marines, his Sharkadons. And he goes, oh, is he bringing Gilliman? What? Why would he?
Nope.
No. No.
Shark that looks like Gilliman?
First off, tell me you don't listen to the show without telling me you don't listen to the show that your company sponsors. Second off, I go,
oh no, we're beefing.
I go, Doug and I always go back and forth on this. I love the guy to death.
It's very funny. It's entertaining.
I go, Josh does not play named characters. Well, why not? I go, because he doesn't like to play named characters. Like he goes for thing. Oh, that's just silly. And I go, again, Doug, we're playing two different games. Like, let me make this. I don't know how to make this more abundantly clear. So, but I mean, that speaks to kind of the competition scene where it's like, I feel like there are, if you're playing some armies, units that you auto take, right? It's like, why would I not take this and hinder myself? When we typically play, it's, I'm playing Thousand Suns. Well, how come you don't, when I went up and played with the Play on Tabletop guys, right? I looked at the comments after. It's like, look at this idiot didn't bring Magnus. Yeah, I didn't bring Magnus. First off, I didn't think I was playing against the tournament list. But second of all, I brought an army that I thought would convey and exhibit, like, here's a Tzeentch Thousand Suns army with some Tzeentch demons attached because it just looks cool and it's thematically really cool. That's what I brought. So you could see, 1, Colin's painting, 2, Dave Paint's painting, and 3, how the army kind of looks together and it's cool and it plays a little bit. And, it's not, Magnus is not an auto take for me. In fact, I've played him maybe twice and I haven't fully painted.
I don't think I don't think I've ever played against your Magnus.
No, if you want to, I'll show you. And he's a beast. Like, I mean,
yeah, he's a monster.
Yeah, he's absolutely super destructive. So I'm like, yeah, I'd rather take like 2 other units that just make it a little more interesting to me. But I can see why people in this event would be like, I'm going to take him right away. I was talking to somebody, Emery. In fact, I was talking to Emery about somebody who came to Hawaii to play in an event. I'm not going to name the individual, but you would know who this individual is. Everybody listening would probably know who this individual is. And the initial feedback in the event, because he came to just a regular Hawaii event that they were running, was, well, this terrain is terrible. I can't hide my whole army the first turn. To me, I'm like, yeah, you gotta make some tough choices. I mean,
yeah, that's called playing the game.
Yeah, it's called playing the game.
Yeah.
But when it's all you're focused on is tournaments in this format, which again, if you like that, that's cool. Then that's what you're expecting. It was very easy for me to hide my entire army in the first turn of each game.
Especially that terrain loadout 8.
Yeah.
Null deployment is the only option because there's literally no other choice.
So, well, let's take a short break. Let's come back and then let's talk terrain and how it changes so much of what the game is. And thoughts I have there. And Campbell, I really want to hear your thoughts, especially on Formation 8, table layout 8.
I've got some notions.
Look it up.
I've got the PDF open right now. I've got some notions of how we got here.
Yeah.
Why that's good, why that might not be good, depending on who you are, where you're at, and what you're expecting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good or bad. I think it's just a thing. It's just a way, right?
Oops, we gave away the rest of the show. Guys, take it back.
Hang on. All right, let's take a short break. We'll come back.
We'll fix it in post,
and we'll talk about this, and then that'll kind of be the show. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Right. Go ahead.
One last thought on War on the Shore is, like, I love Doug, great guy, hung with him plenty, talked to them plenty. We drove to Tacoma together for the Tacoma Open in 2023, etc. Again, love the guy.
Wait, you spent that much time in a car with Doug?
Uh-huh.
How long was that?
Like 6-7 hours.
Ooh, buddy.
Yeah, got really familiar with this playlist. But I will say,
we love you, Doug.
I love him so much. But the notion of, like, I'm going to invite all these players to a tournament on an island and defeat them all. It gives real, like, Bond villain who wants to. It's Mortal Kombat, or I'm bringing players here so I can hunt the most dangerous opponent of all. Man,
it's the most dangerous game. Love it.
The most dangerous game is Warhammer.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Coming out of the event, like, again, I'm not like, the event was fantastic. If you're a tournament player and competition player, the event was fantastic. Am I going to go next year? Yeah, I absolutely am. Am I going to play in the tournament? Don't know. Maybe I'll help out with the tournament instead or something.
Go next year with a fat stack of 20s.
There you go.
Find the people you want to play.
Find the people I want to play and just play. Yeah. I'm definitely going back. Like, the vibe was so good, and the food was good.
The shared experience of, like, the communal meals, and it was really interesting. It was cool bringing everybody together from different groups, different, like, not only play groups, play styles, different islands, because there's people from Oahu, people from Big Island, so mixing all the groups up that way. But then also it was really interesting just hearing, like we were sitting with, like, Brian and Peter quite a bit, listeners of the show, and having, like, more, like, interpersonal conversations and, like, learning, meeting, getting to know people, and, like, building friendships. And then a lot of other, like, conversations you hear on tables nearby were very much talking about, like, meta and lists and stuff like that. And like, they were just, like, super into the competitive part of this, and, like, talking about people's lists. And I heard somebody, like, giving somebody the breakdown of my list for an opponent that I was about to play, and, like, their description of my list, and, like, what it does and how it does. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, not something I care about whatsoever, but it's fascinating that that's happening elsewhere, and I'm making a new friend. Like,
yeah, but it was
a really good time at the same time.
I overheard a lot of that as well. As I was, I heard somebody talking about your list specifically, Josh, where they were like, oh, this is what happened. And what was different was for me and for us is the discussions were all around the tactical, here's how I beat this, or here's what I did. When we finish a game, it is rare that we are talking about that. What we are talking about is, I can't believe this happened. That was funny. Or, wow, you really overcame this. Yeah. There's a very different discussion, and it's nuanced in a different way. But I see the value of, in a competition scenario. Look, I remember when I worked at Yahoo, they had these bocce ball courts near the area. And my boss and a few other folks were like, hey, let's go play bocce ball. This is where I learned to play bocce ball. So when we did Geekin that one year and we had the bocce ball courts and guys were out there, I'm like, let me teach you how to play, because like, this is how it was like, oh, Carl's really good at bocce ball. I'm like, no, I just played in this tournament. So these guys started a tournament and we were playing in the tournament, and I came across their internal wiki page where they were rating all of the opponents, right? Like they were taking it very seriously, much like a 40K tournament where I'm on the other end. I'm like, let's just go out and roll the ball.
Oh, it's just
and like the bocce. And it was so funny because like
drama.
I came across this wiki, and in there they were talking about the other opponents, and it was not complimentary. Like in many cases, it was like, this person's terrible and you got to watch out for this guy and blah, blah, blah. And so I went and just started editing their wiki, and I was like, yes, but he's incredibly handsome. And he's like, next thing I knew, they locked the wiki down. But hey, you left it out there. I'm going to edit it. So it reminded me of that. Like, the discussions I was hearing were very Warhammer serious business. That was the vibe. Like, this is serious business. And to be clear, this is the week before LVO. So people are coming to this event to get their points in the last event they can,
get reps,
to try to get their points in for the final scoring of the tournament season. So many people came here with an objective, right? Which is, again, I think we all came with an objective, but they came here specifically like, I'm looking to,
with a winning objective, or getting points on the board,
on the board so I can be scored here, which, the F1 person in me who watches a whole season of F1 and a championship, it's not just the individual race that you win. It's how is it performing throughout the season. I can appreciate all that. Absolutely appreciate it.
That post-game breakdown, even when I was a casual player, is one of my actual favorite parts of wargaming in general, because from the casual narrative side of things, which casual is not narrative, but just lumping it over there for the time being.
Put things in two buckets for this discussion.
Yeah, put things in two buckets for this discussion. Being like, oh, this crazy thing happened. Oh, can you believe it when I made 14 4-up saves in a row?
Yes.
Or whatever. Like, going over those is awesome. I love that. And I also love the like, what went wrong? What would have worked better here? What misplay did you see? Ooh, you really cinched it on turn 3. Yeah. What led to that happening? Oh man, without that card draw, I would have been screwed. Like, I love both of those, and those two things can go together.
Yes. And
the better your relationship with the other person you're playing, or the more fun you had, the easier it is to kind of cross those over. Like, in my game against a Tau player that I talked briefly about, like, yeah, I smoked him. Sorry. But when we're talking after the fact, we're going over like, oh man, there's this point where I made 3 saves against railguns in a row on my like dreadnought. And as a result, I just was able to just roll it into his army and start punching stuff. If that didn't happen, oh no, things could have gone differently. And talking through that stuff is really fun, because you can learn to become a better player. Yeah. You can get closer to the person you played with as you kind of share this experience. You can kind of like hit Control S and save these memories in your head of that game, because this isn't just a weird die roll you made. Oh no, this is this like epic last stand, and now it lives in your memory forever. But I find the inverse where it's like, oh, I'm going against Chaos Knights next. Let me look at their list. That I hate. That stresses me out so much.
Interesting.
Because I start spiraling, just because that's the way my brain is. So if I see like, okay, I'm playing as Chaos Knights next, type. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
I'm not reading more into it because I am just going to psych myself out until that next round starts.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm the same way, Campbell.
Yeah, last year I was at a tournament and I'm like cramming in lunch before the last game, and I'm like at top table. So I'm like really already kind of shaky. And I'm looking over his list being like, what do I do against an abominant? What do I do against this? What do I do against that? And I'm overthinking.
You're thinking yourself
I'm
out.
psyching myself out. And once the game starts, my brain just goes empty and I flub it on turn 1.
Interesting.
And I'm not going to say that was the reason I lost that game. My opponent was a good player, but that definitely didn't set me up for success because I psyched myself out. I'd rather just, even as a like scare quotes competitive player, I don't want that much information. I don't need to look at their list.
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
I did not look at a single list before a game. Like I just don't care.
I didn't care enough to look. Like a lot of times I'd be like, what does that do? What does that do? What does that do? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Yeah. I'm good. Like, and again, I'm not winning tournaments, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm not winning tournaments. But I also just don't care, which leads me to kind of the first point of why do we even play this game? Like, if I don't care about winning, why do I even play this game? And that's not to say I don't care about winning. I love when I beat Josh. Rarely, I love when I beat Aaron all the time. The reality is like, yeah, of course it's a competitive game by nature. Like I enjoy winning. But I've learned to enjoy losing too.
Yeah.
I don't hate losing this game. For me, as a Dungeons and Dragons player of many years, like I was the DM all the time. I play Chaos because if I'm losing, well, I'm the bad guys, and well, everybody's a bad guy. But you know what I'm saying? Like I'm okay throwing guys, monsters at things, and they get killed. And do I get bummed if Abaddon has to go back into his command barge? Yeah, I mean, I feel that's one of the reasons I like the army. But why do I play it? Well, from the first days that I saw Warhammer being played, or any real tabletop miniatures game, I've never walked up to a Civil War miniatures game at Salute or something and been like, so what are the rules here? Like the first thing I look at is, wow, look at all these beautifully painted figures. Look at the battlefield that they're on. It's creative. It's me playing with my G.I. Joes back when I was a kid, and not just playing around in the dirt with them and being like, okay, well, this is this croppy, outcropping and blah, blah, blah. This is what 40K is to me. It's walking up, seeing a cinematic universe, something that's exciting. Yeah. I've never read a Black Library novel that's like, then the opponents came onto the field of battle and it was equally spaced on every side of the, there's the game.
And it was terrain loadout 8, so there was no line of sight.
It was the forbidden, like, Octarius layout, Octarius pattern layout.
Oh, no.
Said the third lieutenant in the army attached to the third squad of Hellblasters. Yeah.
Who said hi to Gilliman again?
Who said hi to Gilliman on his left, Marnius Calgar on his right.
That's right. 2
squads of Hellblasters right behind him, all behind a conveniently disguised rectangle. Yeah.
Tesseract pattern 8 of the Necron homeworld.
Yeah, I dare any Black Library author to make that sound terribly interesting. Honestly,
John.
John French, looking at you. When we read,
I think we got a Factor fan fiction coming your way soon.
Well, here's the thing: when I read fan fiction for the show, which like I do, as a bit, if you don't listen to the Badcast,
you should.
A lot of them are. Here is a play-by-play of my game, and you can see where it might as well be saying, "I rolled a 6 to hit." Here.
Interesting.
Like I kind of reached this threshold when I was a kid. Sorry, getting off topic.
No. I
was reading a Halo novel. And like I liked The Fall of Reach, and then this was like the novelization of the game that came after it. And there was a scene early on where it may as well have said, and then Master Chief clicked the left stick to aim and pulled the right trigger 3 times and pressed X to reload. Like it was such a beat by beats, like uncreative way of retelling the happenings of the first level or whatever, that it was completely unengaging. Like you need some flair, you need some drama, you need some romance in there. But like you need something to make this interesting.
And I need that on the table to make the table interesting.
Yeah.
That's why I play Warhammer, not checkers.
And that's why I play Warhammer, not checkers, or chess for that matter.
Yeah.
Like when I looked at these tables and the way everything is laid out and the measurement and the precision around all that, I understand why it's like that. I absolutely do. But I looked at it and I thought, War Machine. Like War Machine has creeped into,
absolutely.
You've got your War Machine in my 40K, and I was like, oh, I see I'm again, glad I saw it, played in it personally, because now I have a better understanding of why it is that way and how that impacts the game overall.
Sorry, it's funny you mentioned War Machine, because in a case of the snake eating its own tail, a few of my local guys used to be competitive War Machine players and cut up their War Machine mats to be footprints, the right size for 40K tables. Yeah. So they just kind of get recycled in. I think you make a really good point that War Machine has kind of crept its way back in. And for those who weren't aware of it, War Machine, despite having like a cool setting and cool models and all that stuff, was played on two-dimensional tables. Largely. You had terrain footprint for the most part. Obviously, you could do modeled ones. They sold some nice terrain. But it was mostly played with like little terrain footprints, very similar to what we're seeing now. And I played a game of 40K at my game store a few months ago where all the terrain had been picked over by everybody. So we had to play on just the footprints with like some upturned cards to kind of map out where the buildings was. And I was like, oh yeah, this looks like War Machine. This is a two-dimensional game. When 40K...
Which was just as functional... Right? Like it aesthetically, you don't have the engagement, you don't have the immersion, but it's just as functional. And that for me is what kills it. Like, why isn't there just a piece of acrylic with a Sharpie if that's all you need? Like, if that's all you need to say that's a wall that blocks line of sight. And you could totally do that for a game like the LVO terrain. This is the picture that I sent you, Carl, which was the Actarius like orc terrain flipped upside down.
I saw that.
And it's like, oh, that just inside of it. Like, literally, why even bother at that point? Why not just have a Sharpie line coloring it in and saying, here's your line of sight blocking?
I sent Josh a response saying, I'm getting triggered. Like, this is exactly.
I sent that picture to Carl after I saw it at LVO, and I was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate this? And he just responded with a trigger. Like, and I don't even think there was an answer, because
I was going to say 5 billion, but yeah. So from my perspective, like it's so interesting because like I'll go to the game store and at our local game store, Game Castle, and I'll walk in there and there's this back room where people are playing 40K, and almost 70% of the time, there's half painted armies on the table and people are working towards getting those done, or some are just not working towards it, which again, call me a snob, whatever. I mean, this is the way we play now, fully painted. That's the way we play. But I'll walk back there and then I'll see like the layouts and I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested. And then I kind of leave. Whereas you go to Warhammer World, Campbell and we went, you go to Warhammer World, you look at those tables, you look at the layouts, the dioramas, and you're like, yes, like look at this. Like I remember looking at, I think we talked about, what are the Sigmarite guys in Stormcast Eternals. And I was like, I don't really like these models. Like when they came out, I'm like, I'm not a big fan of the helmets. My brain now would be like, what if I swap the helmets out for something else? That'd be kind of cool, but I didn't like the look of it. And I was like, I don't really get it. It's not for me. I like some of this other stuff. But then I went to Warhammer World and I saw like the whole army on display in like this thematic scenery. And I was like,
immersive diorama.
And I was like, oh, I get it. Like that looks cool as a group. Yeah. And so for me, a game of Warhammer 40K played on a table that is representative of an alien battlefield or a ruined city of the Imperium or something along those lines, with bits of rubble laid around and open lines of fire. Love him or hate him, Donald Rumsfeld once said, about the Gulf War, you go to a war with the army you have, not the one you wish you had. Well, the same is true with the battlefield, right? You don't always get to pick the battlefield, and it's not always equal on the opponent. Now, I'm not saying I want to play a game where it's completely weighted one direction and not, or maybe I do. Sometimes maybe I do for a thematic thing. Typically we try to make
it a fun narrative mission.
Yeah, but typically we try to make an equal amount of kind of terrain on both sides, but it's not identical and
equal but asymmetrical.
Equal but asymmetrical. And the other thing I would add is we in our group do something different than the rules say. In the rules, the first thing you're doing is you're picking the mission, you lay out the objectives, then you build the terrain on the table. 100% of the time, Josh is going to come over play. Aaron's going to come over play. Whoever's going to come over play. I set up a table. Oh, this looks cool. And I'll use this terrain. And I set this all up with an eye towards, we're probably going to have objectives in the middle and on the sides or whatever. Okay. I set all the terrain. Hey, we're here. Here's the table. Okay. Let's pick the mission. We pick the mission. Look, this piece of terrain is sitting right where the objective is. Just move that over a little bit and put the piece down. Okay, cool. And we're off to the races. And I find that way more compelling. And by the way, makes a much bigger difference when you're rolling for table side and who deploys first.
Yeah, rolling for table side when the table is
irrelevant,
symmetrical down to the inch.
Irrelevant.
It's supposed to be like this very tight thing. Yeah, it's irrelevant. It is just what side of the table are you more comfortable standing on?
Well, I've already set my stuff up over here. So
precisely.
And by the way, 9 times out of 10 too, when we start playing and we're like, pick a side of the table, I'm like, my stuff's over here. I'll just take this.
My stuff's over here.
Even if the layout isn't, even if we're playing like a player setup thing, and comfort is the ultimate winning move.
Yeah. So
or you go, or even if it's much bigger, you go, I'm going to take your side of the table, and congratulations, you've won the psychic battle before the game has even begun.
And you're like, you son of a.
That's a real power move right there. Especially when you're in the middle of like a row of tables, so you guys have to both.
Oh my god.
It's a power play.
Oh man. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. You know what? I do want your side. That's my lucky side. So again, for me, like this is what the visual is such an important part of the game. And I feel, let me say what I'm not saying. Okay. So what I'm not saying is that I'm not trying to get tournaments to try to change their style. It is what it is for a reason. And Campbell, you wanted to talk a little about why you think we've gotten here. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to say that anybody's doing anything wrong with the way they play this game. Like it's your game. Play it how you want. Heck, we've been playing Cthulhu Death May Die, and I just read on a Reddit post, oh man, we've been doing something entirely wrong. Like we play the game where each round we get to pick the order in which the players get to go. No, it turns out you're supposed to pick the person to your left. And half the people on this Reddit forum were like, oh yeah, I play it this way. Oh no, we always play it by the rules. And a lot of people are like, it's your game, play it how you want to play it. Mm-hmm. Like I actually like that we have the flexibility to kind of rethink how we're going to approach things by not necessarily just going to the player to the left. So we're going to keep playing it that way, even though it's not how it's written in the rules.
One of the benefits of tabletop games versus video games is you can do house rules, whether that's intentional
or not.
Make
the game your own.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. Like I don't think I've ever played a stock version of Necromunda outside of the like learning scenarios because it's wide open. It's so much fun to house rule. Maybe like we used to play with special rules. So whenever you open a loot casket, it might be full of drugs or whatever, your guys would go nuts, or they'd have to take a willpower test to take this drug or not, because it just made the game more fun. It made the game more interesting for us, and we'd always like allow that wiggle room.
That's the key right there. What makes the game more fun for you? And if or you may enjoy both ways of playing. Josh had a series of great games that he very much enjoyed, hating the terrain on table 8. But
I did hate terrain, but I had 5 very fun games.
There you go.
I did not expect that to that extent going into this event.
There you go. But
I think I'm also kind of right in the middle of you guys, where like I'm a very like casual narrative, not narrative per se, but narrative. I'm a casual garage gamer, really is where I sit. But I also really appreciate a tactical game. So I appreciated some of the aspects of what the terrain was doing there. Like it did make me want to add more density of line of sight blocking terrain to our kind of casual games. But absolutely hate the actual physical interaction of how the templates and terrain works on the board, and just how much it kills that narrative immersion for me of gameplay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So like I appreciate the tactical addition to some degree. I think obviously terrain layout.
There's extremes in either way.
That I hate it and it's way too much. But
listen, nobody wants to fight on adding. Nobody wants to fight on Planet Bowling Ball, right? Like where it's
that was the opposite of Planet Bowling Ball.
Right,
is Planet Bowling Pins, where it's all pins all the time everywhere.
And I love me some Cities of Death, but this was not Cities of Death.
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
God, there was no second story to a lot of this terrain. I was like, plunging fire is a rule that doesn't exist.
I've had plunging fire used against me
once
in 10th edition. Once at a tournament where the person opposite me was like, well, if you measure from under the plexiglass to the top of this ruin, that's 6.025 inches. So I get plunging fire, and I'm like, whatever, man. I don't
have
care.
I'm
going to shoot you. You are dead anyway. Yeah, and precisely. And the thing is, there's no reason you can't play. You can play with bigger ruins if you want to. Also, like your total, especially when it's like home games or whatever, you can still play these layouts. Hell, the Banjo set of terrain I use for a lot of these games, some of those buildings have second stories, and it's made for this style of gaming. But when you go to a GW event and they have these layouts, they're using GW plastic kits, namely like the 2-3 piece ones that are just like wall, floor, and it's like a 2 or 3 piece building. And I love those. I wish they would just sell a freaking set of those and some plexiglass terrain footprints and just be like, here's your tournament kit. That'd be really cool. Free idea there, Games Workshop. Have at it. But
by the way, Tableware sells basically their Tableware fat mat footprints,
neoprene footprints.
Yeah, which are really nice.
Yeah, I've seen them. They are really nice. If I didn't have like 5 sets of Banjo ones from some, I would have picked those up too. But I feel like there is this sort of aesthetic to a lot of the tournament terrain out there, which is like the flat packed MDF stuff.
Yeah.
And it does look like you're playing in a paintball arena.
Yes.
Like
that's a really good comparison. Like, it's a paintball arena.
The Banjo set I have is pre-colored, pre-printed. It's got like you glue extra wall bits. So it's got some extra details and some stained glass windows. And as far as the MDF sets go, it's pretty. I like it. It looks pretty nice. Does it look as good as my painted, weathered, molded plastic terrain? God, no. But it packs up easier.
Can you send me a picture of it so I can share that with the audience? When you get a chance?
I can do that after the show. I think you've seen some pictures of my games with it. But.
Without a doubt, storage is an issue too. And terrain takes up a lot of storage. Yes. I'm fortunate in the sense that I have a very large garage that I'm finally starting to organize my terrain stored out there. But one of my chief complaints is, man, this stuff takes up a lot of space. And if you're running a tournament, being able to flat pack stuff, or as these guys at War on the Shore had, this stuff could come apart and then be packed up. Brilliant. Like, I get it. Adepticon has a massive amount of terrain, and they're a kind of unique entity in this regard. And there's storage, and there's jokes in the painting group for Adepticon that are always like, you know, look, the totes are on sale at Home Depot, and Hank's buying a bunch of these totes. You know, they've gone on sale. They must know Hank is looking, you know, stuff like that, because they have so many of so much of this terrain stored.
The thing is, when you're trying to run tournaments and you want consistency, because that's the main thing you want from tournaments.
Agreed.
Consistency. You want the same terrain. You want the same layouts. Because for years I'd hear, oh, I don't want to play 40K at Adepticon. I don't like the terrain there. Or I don't want to do LVO or whatever because they have this certain type of terrain or player place terrain or whatever. Having that standardized terrain is great for competitive play because it evens the playing field.
And the objective is who's the better player.
Precisely. Not who's the better player at player placed terrain.
Right.
Or who's the better player on Joe's beautiful handmade, scratch built terrain over here. No, who's the better player on this same set of terrain, which for competitive play, I think is great. I think it's
agreed.
Really good. And you don't have to worry about it. You're just like, all right, cool. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm getting into. It all gets back to expectations.
Yeah.
And then I do see the complaint that like, oh, Warhammer is becoming esports. They're trying to make Warhammer an esport. Well, I kind of will say to that, think of the games that are esports. Call of Duty, StarCraft, whatever. Everyone who plays that game, whether they're playing super competitive or super casual, is functionally playing the same game, just in different buckets of players.
Correct.
Like, yeah, I am not very good at StarCraft, despite playing it on and off since I was 8. But the person who is winning championships and making hundreds of $1,000s playing it is playing the same executable. They're just playing in a very different way and at a very different level. So it's like, yeah, are they making Warhammer esports? As much as anything is anything. Sure,
and there's clearly an audience for it. People
there
really is. Watch play on tabletop, do this stuff. You know, Josh and I talked about, do we want to do battle reports? I'm like, no. Why would we want to do that? There's people doing it better and focused on what they're focused on. If we were going to do something along those lines, we have some thoughts on how we would approach it. But you got people like, Chaos Dave, who were doing those a long time ago. And I love the way he was doing it, super narrative, super focused on just the silliness of it.
The best battle report I've seen in my entire life is not from Games Workshop, not from Play on Tabletop, not from Mini Wargaming. I wish I could find it. It is from some nobody on YouTube making a real late 2000s YouTube video where it's just like still shots of the game in progress with character voices and Dawn of War sound effects.
I love it.
It is
nice.
It's like outsider art. It's delightful. But you know what? I followed not just the dice that got rolled, but the story. So if you were to read an old White Dwarf battle report, especially in the old days, even when they're really long, it doesn't say I rolled 6 5s to hit with my Hellblaster volley gun. It says the elf charge came at the Hellblaster volley gun and they stood their ground and opened fire and drove the elves back. It has that more illustrative language.
Yeah.
Warhammer, I think the thing is Warhammer is a lot of things. It's a lot of things to a lot of people.
Yes.
It's very hard to be everything to everyone all the time.
Correct.
My sort of ideal of 40K at this moment in time, because I've been playing since end of third, but my ideal version of 40K right now is a competitive game with 2 beautifully painted armies on a beautiful table. And it is played on one of those layouts, maybe not layout 8, maybe layout 3, or layout 1, something a bit more gentlemanly.
Definitely.
A bit more gentlemanly.
A match play game with 2 beautiful armies and 2 people who enjoy each other's company. And that is how I play most of my games these days. And we're trying to sharpen ourselves up for tournaments and
of course
do cool moves, do cool army builds and all that stuff. And we are in that framework, but we are still bringing ourselves to it.
Yeah. That's important. I feel like, to a degree, as well, the current focus on competition tournament play also stifles a little bit of creativity in some ways, but it also may force some creativity in other ways too. I don't know. It's again, my experience with it is just not how I think of the game or how I play. And you know what's interesting, Campbell, as you said, it's hard to be, you can't be everything to everybody. To a degree, 40K is in a really good spot in the sense that it kind of can be. Like, you can play tournament War Machine 40K the way you're playing it.
Yeah.
You can play...
as long as you can find a group of like-minded
individuals.
Right,
you can play super narrative. You can play somewhere in between. That actually, one of the strengths of Warhammer 40K, I think, is that it offers you kind of an open playbook to play it how you want to play it. And I didn't really formulate that thought in my head until you kind of said those things, and it's kind of landed with me that, and again, every way to play it is fine. It's your game. Make it your own. Enjoy it with your friends. Enjoy it with strangers. I think, to your point and Dan's point, the best way to enjoy it with strangers, at least at the get-go, is matched play, where it's like we're coming with an understanding on how we want to play. It does kind of sadden me a little bit that the majority of introduction it feels to the game by new players, whether they're coming from War Machine, whether they're coming from Magic the Gathering, whether they're coming from StarCraft, or for that matter, from Space Marine 2, is here's this competition way to play the game. and a lot of the nuance of like, yeah, but here's this, you like reading the books, you like playing the video game, here's the story and how you can play it story wise. And that gets, I feel, kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit. When I got into Death Guard, you talked about battle reports. One of the battle reports I read was Typhus and these plague marines and plague zombies and stuff fighting in, you know, trying to take this temple and stuff. And I'm like, you would never see that in a competitive. Steph, okay there, Josh?
That's Dobby pushing his food ball down the hall.
All right, it sounded like a snare drum rolling down a stair.
I'll mute myself for a bit.
No, don't worry about it. But
No, you're fine.
My point there is like, I think some of that is getting lost. And so why don't we do tournaments and me personally, and why don't I, because those aren't the things about 40K that interest me. What interests me is what I bring to this show, which is here's our narrative experience. Here's how, look at these beautiful pictures and videos that we're showing you of our armies on a beautiful table. And, you know, if anything, this has made me double down on every time I do a table layout, I'm going to try to make it as cool looking as possible. And really embrace that aspect of it. That's me.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
And bring more theme to army builds. Like, again, playing against, 13 Knights was like, it was a fun experience. I actually enjoyed the game.
Sure.
But it's not a list that I like. The Knight experience is never one that I'm like, oh yeah, like I want to play against Knights, just because like thematically, even in the bigger like lore of 40K, doesn't make as much sense for that fight to like, is this really the right utilization of Knights in a 40K deployment? From a lore standpoint. I don't know. It's interesting, but I obviously there's some lists, and again, listening to your show, Campbell, of you and Dan talking about it, you are generally very happy with the games that you played. Like, you'll play a ton of games and have good experiences with opponents and lists, and it's like that kind of excites me a little bit for competitive play, but at the same time, the certain list building just kills my immersion. So when you have the terrain and like list building is, let's lean into 3 of a thing instead of here's a really thematic list that has a lot of flavor and lore to it. Just kind of kills competitive play for me inside, and it's just an interesting mindset.
The last point I'll leave, and then Campbell, I'm going to give you the last word here. But the last point I'll leave with is the other thing we do is once we set up the table, we have a discussion about like what each piece of terrain does, and okay, yeah, we'll get cover from these. If you're on here, you're getting cover. If not, in a tournament environment where you're under a time limit too, this avoids that discussion for you. Because it's already been had for you. We've said a long time, like the difference between a tournament and what we're playing is we walk up and we have like a gentleman's agreement and discussion about this is how we're going to play. And we have that talk in an event, like that conversation has been had for you already. It's here's how the game is played. Okay, cool. We all know like this upside down piece of terrain is actually line of sight blocking, So, anyway, that's my take on it. Campbell, I want to give you, unless Josh has something else, I want to give you the last word here.
Kind of got 2 bits here. The first is also I've been fortunate that most of what's thematic for the armies I play has been pretty good for 10th edition. Yeah. Like Black Templars have been in a very good place. Marines are in a very good place in general. And the Guard army I'm building towards should also be doing pretty well. I have a hard time building something that isn't thematic in some way because, High Marshal Helbrecht and Grimaldus might not take the field together very often. The army they're leading looks like a Black Templars army.
Yours looks awesome.
Thank you. But I don't just mean like paint jobs wise, but like construction wise. Yep. Like it'll have Crusader squads. It's actually the reason why I'm like, running Black Templars minus Black Templars for that oath bonus still feels weird to me. Like right now I've been struggling with running 10-man squads in my Ultramarines because I had all 5-man squads with individual squad heraldry and so on. I'm like, do I have to paint 5 more guys in squad 3 to make me feel good running this or whatever? But I've been fortunate in that way. And there are we're fortunate when we say we're in like the best time for 40K or whatever. I do think part of that is that you can build most armies trending towards competitive and still have them look like that army. Like it's not like the period where people were running 3 Blood Angels captains with jump packs and Thunder Hammers and minimum squads or whatever. Like, yeah, you can do that, but that's not what the main thing is, which is nice. But I also think, as for how we wound up here, as with so many things, I kind of want to blame COVID. There's my 11th hour plot twist here. Because during the bad times, a lot of people were playing Tabletop Simulator.
Mm-hmm.
And that is lovely little PC app. It is clunky. It is clumsy. It does a million things. It doesn't do many of them well, but it kind of works, and that's enough. And for people just trying to play Warhammer using Tabletop Simulator, the first and most prevalent stable modules that were made were tournament play ones, where you could just press a button, boom, there's a terrain layout. You don't have to futz around with dragging buildings and hoping you don't knock them over. No, it just goes, boom, they're there. Your zones are all laid out, ready to roll. And even people I know who do a lot of like play testing or who are trying out lists before events, they still play in TTS a lot just because it's a very easy, convenient way to do this stuff. And in something so, when that was the way to play essentially for over a year, that kind of changed things. And of course, like GW events have been using these terrain layouts for a while. Before that, again, like Nova has its somewhat infamous Nova L's that were on every single table that were 6 inches high exactly, and so. But I do think that a lot of people getting into the game or playing the game during the bad times using Tabletop Simulator flavored the direction that the game went.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
And again,
that would explain why I didn't play much of 9th edition, because Tabletop Simulator does not scratch that itch for me.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think it's Tabletop Simulator during that
some
period.
games it works very well for, some games not so much.
Yeah.
Titanicus works great because you have 4 models, and line of sight is pretty easy to actually measure from a 3D table. Shatterpoint works pretty great, turns out. Other games, not so much. Big games, non-skirmish games.
But even there, I have no interest in playing Titanicus on Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, it was.
I played a game against Loopy, so he lives in New York, so that
would be the exception. Playing with somebody who is remote. Sorry, Campbell, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I was saying during that period it was pretty clutch. It's let me play games with my dad even still, but
understood.
It is like food without flavor. Like you get some nourishment from it, but you got no taste. Yeah. So
it's like hanging out on Zoom.
Precisely.
All right, and with that note, I think we've kind of reached the natural conclusion of this conversation. Yeah, so let's do this. We'll take a short break. We'll come back and we'll close out the show. All right, so we're back. We're going to close out the show. Campbell, thank you so much for joining us, because again, as during the break, Josh just said it would have been Carl and I agreeing for 45 minutes. Like, I don't even know that we're arguing about anything or really even like, I'm on board. I get it. Like, I understand. I'm just saying, here's this other way to play. And this is why tournaments don't appeal to me. Zach, who used to be on the show, we were trying to get him to play tournaments with us, Josh, back when and he was like, I used to play tournaments. I'm done with tournaments. I don't like them. I kind of feel like here I am 10 years later going, I see what Zach was saying. And that's not entirely true. Like it's a bit nuanced and a little bit different, but I appreciate where he was coming from more than I probably did at that time. And I have for
this was the first tournament I've played in since 6th edition. So I took best overall at a local GT in 6th edition, and I was like, I'm going out on top. And then War on the Shorts in Hawaii, like I have to come. So I came out of retirement for it, and like don't miss the tournament scene whatsoever. But still had very fun games. So
you played
not a tournament though.
You played the
Combat Patrol and Legions Imperialis.
Combat Patrol's 40K.
That's not a tournament game. I mean, sure.
It was made. Listen, the 3 trophies you were holding the picture of would say differently. just because they wouldn't give you the 4th one because they felt like, somebody else should get a trophy.
Somebody else should want some trophies too.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think my last kind of bit here is that like 40K is my tournament game right now. That might change.
Yeah.
I'll see how things develop. Again, the only thing is I'm going to be playing war games for my whole life, ideally. How I engage them is the thing that changes. Like I've played in AOS tournaments. It's fine. I'd rather play that as a casual game. I'm playing Game of the Old World on Wednesday. Sure as sugar, that is not a tournament game I'm playing. That is just two folks rolling up and having a nice time together. But 40K right now is my tournament game.
That's awesome.
And I'm cool with that. And
40K for me is my narrative exploration game. And it's great that it can work in both ways, I think. Yeah. Okay.
40K is one of the many games I play, so I play too many games.
That's the thing. When you play more than one game, it's very hard to play them all at the same level. Like
for sure.
Yeah.
So please leave us reviews wherever you're listening to us, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, whatever you want to leave us a review. We greatly appreciate it. We do have a Facebook group. I want to talk a little bit about that because I'm thinking about actually leaving Facebook. So as a result, the group is under my account. I've created another account where I would just use it to manage that Facebook group, but I haven't made that decision yet. But I'm strongly leaning one direction at the moment. And what does that mean for the Facebook group? I'm not really sure. Quite frankly, the Facebook group is the only thing tying me to Facebook at this time. Same. And I'm trying to do a lot more, I think, with Discord at the moment. But I haven't made any decisions yet, but I think it's fair to let people know that we have this Facebook group. It's a great and positive community in a cesspit of stuff that is not great and positive. And so that's one of the things that I love about it. And one of the reasons I'm thinking, hey, if I just create this account that has no friends, no nothing, but I'm managing and I can just post to the Facebook group, maybe that works for me, and close down the rest of my Facebook account. But I again haven't made that decision yet, but I just wanted to make sure people understand where I'm coming from at that point. Everybody has to make that decision for themselves. But I just have a issue with kind of social media at the moment in general.
Yeah, it's almost like maybe our primary means of communication shouldn't be owned by extremely evil billionaires. Sorry, I said it.
On top of I'm with you, and on top of that, I just feel like it's not been healthy for a lot of people. God, no.
And not for a long time.
And I've kind of tuned out Facebook for like the last 2 weeks, kind of intentionally. In fact, when I find myself I've removed it from my phone. And while I find myself kind of looking at it online, I kind of quickly move away from it because I'm trying to just see like what mental impact that has on me at the moment. So
when I got on Facebook in 2005, I was looking at what my friends were up to.
Yeah.
When I go there now, I get a bunch of AI slop, a bunch of ads for things I don't want or need, and suggestions for pages I have no interest in.
And
so why am I going here? Yeah.
It's a paid platform now.
Yeah. The one bright spot for me is that Facebook group.
The Facebook group is great. Again, no shade there. I am just also thinking that
I'm with you.
We how do you feel about forums again?
Dude,
genuinely.
I'm not even joking. Like I was like, I could install forums again, but people are going to have to go register for them. But I
bring the forum back.
Dude, Campbell and I both were forum junkies back in the day.
Oh, we met.
Yeah.
So maybe it would be a good thing to have more than 3 websites on the internet. Maybe making a couple more. Good.
Campbell, it's funny. I was thinking about something awful, which is where we met in our trip to England and such, where you saved my wallet from getting lost on a bus. And I was trying to recreate like, what was the connection I had with Campbell that I was like, hey, we're going to Warhammer World. Do you want to go with us? And you're like, yeah, okay. Like, I don't know how we got to that point, because then when we met, it was like the first time we met in person, and we're like, oh, hey, so how's it going?
Yeah, because I was an East Coast guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was because
in Heathrow. It's the first time you met.
Pretty much outside Heathrow. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's because on on Something Awful, people be like, oh, are there Warhammer podcasts? I'd be like, oh, there's this pretty good one called The Independent Characters.
Yeah.
Give it a listen. I think that was mostly it.
And we just started chatting.
I was doing the first Hobby Progress Challenge way back in the day with my Retro Ultramarine.
Right.
So I was posting on those forums a lot. So I think not just the Something Awful forums, but the Independent Characters forums. So I think there was that sort of thing going on, and we chatted a little bit, in like DMs between this, and then you sent me that invite, and I'm like, all right, cool. I'm young and impulsive and have just enough money to do this.
Sure. Meet these strange guys on the internet. Sure, why not?
Gonna go around.
Sell my kidneys. All right. Well, we got that. We have a Patreon where we're including additional content as well. And yeah, I think we'll talk a lot about LVO in that, and then we'll talk about it on the show in a different capacity. Josh, what else you got?
I got a quick call out for just a huge shout out to Amory for his hospitality, generosity, all the hard work that he put into this. He helped get me there. He put me up. I stayed with him Sunday night before flying home. Just opened up his house, opened up the island, brought the communities together. So just a huge thanks to him for all the hard work and kind of logistics and things that he did to pull this off. So
yeah, really, without a doubt.
Thanks, buddy.
Without a doubt.
Couldn't say how much I appreciate it.
And Todd organizing the whole thing, and really, I mean, he got pushed to do it, and then he did it, and it's been very successful for the charity. And so, they do want to do it again. So, and I'll go again. Maybe I'll be the ringer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Amory specifically has tasked you and I to come up with a narrative approach, something that they could do on the side of that.
Yeah.
What we would want that to look like.
Yeah, because it was funny that they were like, well, what if all these games feed into this narrative? And I'm like, that's not, going back to the original point, Cam, that's not a narrative game. That's not a narrative game. What you're talking about is just putting a lipstick on a pig for me.
That's window dressing on competitive play.
I mean, that's not what it's about, which tells me like you're not understanding what I'm saying. So I need to figure out how to convey that a little better.
Yeah.
The other thing
because they want to make it a larger GT, which has me even less interested in playing there. But I would
do some narratives.
But like it's such a cool experience. It's such a cool venue and just such a unique way to kind of bring everything together and all these different groups together that I would absolutely be interested in going and attending and doing something, especially if it's more of a, if like a 40K flex in Hawaii or something like that.
The staff there was fantastic too. Like the YMCA staff was fantastic. Super.
It was incredible.
Super fun.
Yeah.
So the 40K Flex, which is an event that the independent characters are sponsored, and I'm running 2 of the 4 days that it's running at Adepticon, is trying to convey kind of that just, you walk up to the table, we'll set up the terrain so it's all set up. You guys figure out how you want to play. It's really not about competition. If you want to play one of those games with your tournament list against somebody else, I'll try to match you up against somebody else playing a tournament list. But people are allowed to bring Legends units, et cetera, Just have fun. And there's no, you're not getting points for
Garage
winning.
Hammer at a con. And the fact that it sold out immediately shows that there's demand for it.
I'd love to tell you go join it, but I think it's sold out at the moment. In fact, I think the wait lists are full too. So
I couldn't even get on a wait list is how sold out it is.
Yeah.
You can't get on a wait list for an event that you are sponsoring. My God.
Yeah. We'll make something happen. So that's
the wait list worked. The wait list that did eventually open up. So keep checking. If you didn't make the wait list, you may be able to get on the wait list. And I did. I was able to make it happen.
Well, that's where I will be Thursday and Saturday. So if you want to come up and say hi, say hi. We have tons of t-shirts still to sell. So please go order t-shirts. I've shipped out almost all of them. I think I have like 2 orders waiting to go. But also we've added a checkbox to the order form that if you want to pick it up at Adepticon or you're coming internationally and want to pick it up to Adepticon, we'll bring it for you to take home. Or if you're picking up for a friend, we can do that as well. Just check the checkbox on the full order form. I think that's it. I'm looking forward to Adepticon, man. It's going to be so good. It's going to be so good.
Same.
I can't wait. We're going to have so many friends there. It's going to be amazing. All right. Well, listen, until next time, this is Carl.
This is Josh.
This is Campbell.
We're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where you can make your 40K experience your own.
And where 40K Summer Camp is a win for all.
Where you don't hate the player, don't hate the game, hate the layout 8.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
So much hate.
We'll catch you next time. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.